It is now 6 o'clock and we will call this regularly scheduled commission meeting for Wednesday, May 17th, 2023 to order. Can we all please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance? Our invocation will be by Pastor Brenda Englehart of First Bryant Baptist Church. Thank you for being with us, Pastor.
Dear wise and loving Father, thank you for your many and abundant blessings and for all who are gathered here today. Thank you for life itself, for such health and strength as we have, for giving us what we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendships and relationships. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful and meaningful work, and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you, or for you to reject you. Bless our mayor, council members, and all our city officials. Graciously give them the wisdom to govern amidst conflicting interests and issues of our time. Grant them a sense of the welfare and true needs of your people, our people. Keen thirst for justice and righteousness. Grant them confidence to determine what is good and what is evil. The ability to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreement. Personal peace in their lives, and let them take joy in their task of serving you and serving your people. Give our mayor and council ears to listen to the people they serve, and the wisdom to act for justice. Grant them an assurance of what will please you and what will benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Brunswick. These and all blessings we ask in your most blessed name. In the name of your darling Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now move on to the adoption of the May 17, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting agenda. Do we have any addendums or subtractions?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to add a couple of things and defer a couple. I'm going to make a motion to add as item number 10, consider approval of the Glen Brunswick Services Agreement for external services. And then also a motion to add as item number 2B, consider approval of proclamation for the City of Brunswick's second annual wellness walk, run, bike event. And then I would like to defer under appointments, item number 6, sections 1, 2, and 3 to be deferred, those appointments.
Hearing that as a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes and the agenda is adopted. We will now move on to the public comment period, and Devani, I will go to you to call those names out piece by piece. Or is that Naomi? I'm sorry, Miss Naomi, can you do that for me? And we have a lot of you all's information, but if you have not turned in your information, please make sure you give that to Miss Naomi before you go, because we have an abundance of speakers. We're going to have 2 minutes per speaker, and make sure you have all of those comments directed towards us here on the DIOS. So with that, I'll turn it over. Mr. Watts, we are needing you to unmute yourself so we can have you for public comment.
Yes, sir.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Watts.
Yeah, realize that, okay. And are you telling me to speak or just to be unmuted?
Jazz, it's your turn to speak.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear him. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners. I asked to speak today. I didn't know we only had 2 minutes to show my support for the residents of Marside regarding this development from Maritime LLC and Mr. Kate along the Glen Avenue overlay district. I just want to say I spoke at prior planning and appeals commission along with the residents to just talk about how the developer just has failed to incorporate all of these recommendations. And I would just venture to ask the city, should the developers get to pick and choose from, the mandatory city codes, ones that will allow him to, pack as many units, or do we get to pick and choose? This area is one of the last developable properties within the city limits with waterfront access and marsh vistas. And as a community, we intentionally developed the guidelines for the district to allow the public access to the waterfront, to the marsh, as well as walking and bike paths that really connect the corridor. So I just implore upon the commission to listen to the community, the nearby residents, the business owners. I mean, the Planning and Appeals Commission voted this down 5-1. I mean, 5-1 to deny this development. And I'm still learning about, how the city may do things, but it just seems to me that with that vote, that's clearly saying that there's things that still need to be done with this development. And the community members aren't saying that they don't want it. They're just saying that it needs to comply within the ordinance, within the codes, as we are just trying to get it to be done, but get it done in the right, in the meaningful way. So I just consider you to say that, the ordinance and laws that you have on the books should not be optional. They are our local laws. That's why we have these codes and these enforcements. People don't get to pick and choose which ones they want to follow. That this district is intended to prioritize, pedestrian orientation and sidewalks for connecting people, connecting green space. But that isn't what is happening here. And yes, maybe while the developer has followed the buffer, has gotten rid of a building, there's still these other recommendations, and not even recommendations, but requirements through the ordinance and through the Glen Avenue design framework that are clear and specific that they're not following. So with that, I just implore this commission to say, even if, I would like to see it denied.
Mr. Watts, you got about 15 seconds.
Okay, if you don't deny it and you feel that you must approve it, asking for the conditions that they have not done, so that you can assure the people of Marshside that you hear them and you hear what they're saying to you in meeting after meeting after meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Watts.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is William Kitts, Chairman of the Urbana Perry Park Neighborhood Planning Assembly. I am writing reading the written statement from our Madam Vice Chair, Miss Anita Collins. Greetings to our elected officials. I must share that I alerted our city clerk, Miss Atkinson, that since I am unable to occupy 2 different spaces at the same time, I would ask a neighbor to read my comments and provide a copy to each of you. I thank my neighbor for agreeing to read the comments. I wrote to share with you this evening. The property owners of 1620 Tillman Avenue and several other properties think it is appropriate to have employees load and haul construction debris from other properties under renovation to unload and dump at their Urbana Perry Park property. Repeated dumping of construction debris occurred at the Tillman Avenue property. Thanks to code enforcement for curtailing this activity, the property owners have demonstrated that their property acquisition motives are solely profit-driven. Thank you, code enforcement. From our perspective, we must alert you that during the Commissioner's December 7th, 2022 meeting, Attorney Jim Bishop and Mayor Johnson stated without hesitancy that the Port City Partners would meet with the Urbana Perry Park Neighborhood Planning Assembly regarding the proposed planned development project for 2307 Gloucester Street. On multiple occasions, we have contacted Attorney Bishop, senior paralegal, to confirm the date for Brad Piazza to attend an Urbana Perry Park Neighborhood Planning Assembly meeting. To date, a meeting with Mr. Piazza has not been scheduled. Our next meeting will be 6 p.m. May 23rd. Know that our neighbors have asked when will Port City Partners, that is Brad Piazza and his partner, begin to fulfill the assurance of transparency made during the June 22nd, 2021 meeting with our Neighborhood Planning Assembly. We have been informed that Mr. Piazza has not agreed to meet with us because he is continuing to discuss plans with his consultants in an effort to make a decision on final plans for the 2307 Gloucester Street project. In other words, on June 2nd, 2021, the City Commission unanimously approved the 2307 Gloucester Street Plan Development Plan, which included a 5-story building design. And to date, Mr. Piazza is still working to develop final plans for the plan. We are in disbelief. A developer can present a plan to the City Commission. It is approved unanimously, yet the plan is not actually the plan because 23 months later, the developer is still developing the final plan. Our neighbors are very concerned about this plan development because we recognize that developers can easily ignore the concerns of our neighbors regarding the planned development's density, height, insufficient parking, flooding, green space, traffic problems, etc. We certainly want neighborhood improvements and we want the character of our neighborhood sustained and respected. But you are the elected officials heeding our concerns, or do you think you know better than we, the people? Anita D. Collins, Vice Chair, Urbana Perry Park Neighborhood Planning Assembly, 1602 Tillman Avenue, May 17, 2023. Thank you.
Be brief. I'm Michael Lehman, 1626 Tillman. And I am here primarily to give a heartfelt thank you to code enforcement, in particular to Tommy Dixon. The dumping situation, there's a very long, skinny driveway between that house and my house. And this group started showing up with dump trailers, large dump trailers, and just dumping them in the driveway and taking off. And tried to talk to them and got nowhere. We did involve Tommy, and he, with alacrity, showed up and put a stop to everything. They had a dumpster in front of the first few dumps. They loaded everything up, they hauled it away, and it appears they aren't repeating that problem. But I think by now it would have been a terrible mess. The property owner bought 19 properties in Brunswick from a friend of his who's was the landlord, who is on St. Simon's Island. And apparently he's working on the other ones. Some of them are in College Park and some other places. They're not doing too much with this one at the moment, although his construction manager, whose name I don't have, told me that they are planning also to use this property as a barracks or a dormitory for their construction workers as work progresses, which doesn't sit well with us either. I don't know if there's anything in code that speaks to that, but I would like to call to the attention of the city attorney. At any rate, those 19 properties all showed up as one sale for 1.2 million and change. And they're all hiding behind two different LLCs. But thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. I think all of you except one know that I'm angry as hell for first being here tonight. And the purpose of that is that the well, as most of the citizens know, was in the heart of downtown, has been moved into my front door. Practically, I can walk out the front door and be at the new well. We have experienced all kinds of vulgarity constantly. We see folk using the bathrooms right in front of our front porches and everything. I have talked to everybody I know in government, and some of you I wasn't very pleasant with. And I'm here because I feel now that we have a government in this city that can permit another city, or rather another citizen, to open up any kind of business he wants to next door to his neighbor without consent of our government. Give an example of what I'm saying now. Miss Commissioner Martin has a beautiful front yard. And if somebody owned a piece of property next door and wanted to put a used car lot there without the consent of the government, something wrong with the government. Now, we had 5 carloads of policemen to come out there Friday before last because one of the neighbors thought the homeless people were breaking into church. And I don't want to refer to that building as a church because it's not. It's an abandoned building and it has been abandoned for the past 17 years. Now, these folk came out there, police has checked them and found out that they had been given permission by Reverend Lyde to use a church to substitute the well from downtown. Now, I feel that the government, and I've worked with city government ever since I've been here, since 1961. I felt that the policeman should have asked Zach Lyde or whoever was in charge of those homeless people that Friday evening, do you have a permit for coming to this building? Now, here's an empty building, hadn't had electricity in years, no running water. And this person took about 22 homeless people in there and slept them on the floor for 4 days. I contacted and went and had meetings with the code enforcement. Code enforcement invited me out to church. It must have been last Thursday, said that, Mr. Griffin, we are on our way out there now to serve them an order to vacate the premises. And we mean move the 2 portalets or whatever you call them, their toilets. Also remove the tent. And one of the code enforcement officers said that, Ms. Griffin, you can accompany us out there. I said, well, I live out there. So sure enough, I followed them out there. They had to wait 20 minutes for the minister from Savannah to come there before they could meet with Zach Lyde. So after waiting 20 minutes, Reverend Small showed up. And I'm still standing there watching everything. The code enforcement presented them the order, and they had told me before I left the meeting with them downtown that, Mr. Griffin, they have 24 hours to obey this code order.
Mr. Griffin, you got about 30 seconds.
How many?
30 seconds.
I thought you said 30 minutes. 30 seconds. Okay, thank you. But anyway, the point I want to make is that these people ignore the code enforcement because nothing has happened. And this happened Friday. And I expected Saturday that they would come out there and take the tent down and everything. But I want to let you all know that if this is the type of government we are living under, we're in trouble. So please hurry up and do something to eliminate that travesty in front of my house and in my neighbor's house. Thank you.
I live at 1804 G Street. where the homeless are there. Before they got the portalets, they were using the bathroom around the church. I don't think they have running water or anything. It's time for them to go someplace else. That's not sanitary. Them sleeping out on the concrete with a tent. The city has to do something. Now, I don't know what you're gonna do, but they can't stay there. They don't need to be there. And why they are there, I don't know. But please, do something. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to speak to you in support of the Maritime Homes LLC. I was born in Brunswick. I lived in Brunswick all of my life, with the exception of going off to school, getting married. My husband and I moved back here after he was discharged from the Air Force. My father was one of the original developers of Riverside. If Roy Smith were alive today, he would be standing here sharing with you the same thing I'm sharing with you. This development is a gift to Brunswick and Glenn County. My father and the men that were part of developing Riverside and Marshview condominiums tried to acquire that property for years and years, and they weren't able to. And they wanted to do some of the same things that Vasicate is trying to do. He wanted to beautify the entrance, have good retail and things on that street, and they were never able to get the property from the owner. I've had experience with Riverside all my life. I lived there as a young child. My parents lived there until they died. When they died, my two sisters and I owned their property until just a few years ago. So I know exactly what the people of Riverside and Marshview have been through and are going through. But I believe this is going to be a wonderful addition to both those neighborhoods. It's going to be wonderful for the city tax base, the county tax base. It's going to provide good homes for people. I've known Vasicate all his life. I've known his family all of my life. He is smart. He is talented. And if anyone has ever seen a development he has done, he puts in the most beautiful landscaping I've ever seen in any development. He can be trusted with this project, and I beg you to let it happen. It is good for this community. Thank you.
Good evening, Dave Bowers. Is Ms. Harris online? Do we know? Okay, good. Dave Bowers, I reside at 526 Newcastle Street, South End, Historic Brunswick Neighborhood Planning Assembly. I'm here to introduce myself to Ms. Roll, the mayor, my board, Julie and John and Ms. Harris, but we need to get to know each other. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Don't hold that against me, but Jersey gets a bad rap. The town and county that I lived in were similar to Brunswick and Glen. One of the boundaries was the Delaware River. The place was flat. We had marshes, tides. It was prone to floods. We had our own Pinova. It was an EI DuPont plant. My grandparents worked there. My father worked there. His brothers worked there. It was a blue collar plant, and we too had a plume every once in a while. So again, I think there's some similarities here. I was the first one in the Bowers family to attend college, and I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering in 1973. I relocated to Northern Virginia, outside of the nation's capital. I started working in water and wastewater, but soon went into land development, subdivisions, residential, commercial, including roads, utilities, and the like.
Once I became a professional, getting my PE license, started my own firm. I grew it with engineers, land surveyors, landscape architects, and planners. There were 45 of us. Our work included annexations, comp plan amendments, rezoning, special exceptions, conditional uses. I held the position of town engineer for 3 or 4 towns in Virginia, so I worked both sides of the fence, if you would. In the area where Northern Virginia exploded, Loudoun County, at one point in time, we had 3 different zoning ordinances that you needed to comply with based on some state legislation. I was an engineer of record on several projects for Pulte Homes, for Lennar Homes. I worked with the Redskins on their training facility. I've reviewed Salamander Inn and Spa by Miss Sheila Johnson in Middleburg. I worked for the Loners who own the Nationals, who have a great portfolio of retail and multifamily. So after 45 years, it was time to hang up the slide rule. Just to take you back, when I was in college, you weren't even allowed to use a hand calculator. That's just how old I am. I started studying Brunswick's ordinance in 2013, 10 years ago. I found that it was old, piecemealed, and used the old pyramid approach. I know we're working on changing that. But for me, the CG core, the zoning fit what I wanted to do. I wanted to come to town, use that as a residence. So I purchased 1212, 1214 Newcastle and converted it to space for my home and office. It needed a lot of love, spelled M-O-N-E-Y. But I succeeded. And I've since sold that to Lisa and Derek Jordan. And it's now known as the location of Funky Fest, I believe.
You got about 15 seconds.
We were on the Christmas tour as well. So as I'm on the PAC. I have 1 year left. I've been the chairman, I've been the vice chairman, and you're probably going to be hearing more and more from me.
Perfect.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Hello, hear me now? Okay. First of all, I'll apologize for last week or last time I was here. When I went out the door, my water bottle I had collapsed and the door slipped out of my hand. It slammed a little hard. So I apologize for that. Not all. I want to know where the money from the state, the federal government is going for the homeless in the city of Brunswick. Where's it going? I know you get some, but where's it going? That's the hygiene bags. Basically, that's your bath and shower, brush your teeth. And I meant to make your breath smell good. That's all the homeless got to do now. Get 2 of those a week. GDP, it means one thing for you guys, folks. To me, it's gangs, guns, drugs, prostitution. Where you find one, you'll find the other. Sure enough, every time. And you just push the homeless from your front door, except now. They'll be back probably, but the one gentleman said something about the place on front of his house. It's not the well. It's homeless people. What are you gonna do with them? You're gonna shove them out further? Where are you gonna? Where are they going? They ain't got nowhere to go. For voting, because they got a new home. The last 2 times I voted, though, it never got put in right. I don't like. Very last time, everything was electronic until you dropped it off. It's supposed to be electronically counted. You put it in a drop box because the machine was broke down. I don't know if my vote got counted or not correctly. Another thing is the illegals are getting welfare. The wife, the women and the kids are. They don't know where their husband is. He's in Mexico. He's right there working on the table, getting welfare. He's running people out. I haven't had a caseworker. I get $30 a month food stamps. I haven't had a caseworker since last December. She retired and said she'd find somebody else. Can't find nobody. I went up to the place up here. It's shut down. There's cars out back where employees are working in there, but every time I call them, I get a phone recording it all the way along and no answers.
Got about 15 seconds.
Okay, I'll cut it short then. Seems like St. Simon's Island's moved into Brunswick city limits. 17 the Causeway, it's Little St. Simon's Junior. And the very last thing I'll say, I don't know how you can pray and praise the Lord on this stuff when you're throwing his kids out in the street to do for themselves for nothing. People are hurting. And it's only gonna come around to hurt later on. Yeah, I guess I can't talk. I only got one more meeting I can come to, so I'll cut it short. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our speakers for coming. We always appreciate that. There is, Brian, I'm put you on the spot a little bit here. There is one issue that I do want us to speak to briefly, which is the situation on G Street. In no way, shape, form, or fashion does this commission condone or believe that that is the right way to serve those in indigent circumstances. It is important to us that whoever works in that area ensures that they have real programmatic structure that helps people on their way to stabilization. We in no way believe what is going on G Street is being done under those guidelines. In no way have they come before the city. In no way have we approved it. In no way have we asked them or told them to move, but we have done several things to the contrary. We have worked to alert them that everything that they are doing is not under our structure and is illegal. We were the ones who ordered them to initially be taken out of that building because that building was unsafe. That building had several fire hazards, several open electrical wires, several things that could harm anyone that was inside of that structure. And so it's important for me to let, I think, the general public won't know, but even more so those in that area know the things that have been done so far to work on that circumstance. So I'll turn it over to City Attorney Corey to talk about a few of the things that we've done.
I don't speak too much on that, but there's pending cases, enforcement cases from code enforcement and the police department that will be brought before municipal court on May 31st. So we are seeking to enforce our ordinances and our laws and with the intent of keeping people safe and making sure these are not violations that will continue. So that would be May 31st.
If those who are operating on G Street wanted to do that under the structure that we passed, we would ask them to, number one, do what they have not done, which is have a conversation with the community that is adjacent and connected. They have not talked to the community. They have not talked to churches in the area, which is the number one step for this commission in regards to a whole host of issues. So we will continue to work diligently on that issue. And in the meantime, while we are working to resolve that issue, we have ensured, or we will be ensuring, that there is an increased police presence in the area. So if you see things that are going on that are illegal, if you see things that are lewd in nature, we ask you to not only call us and email us, but to also call law enforcement so that we can not only handle the issue, but we can also log it appropriately to ensure that this doesn't continue to be a nuisance in our community. With that, we'll move on to recognitions, presentations, and awards. And we want to start with a special one, but before we even get into that, I want to bring up a really important event that is going on, which is Champions for Children. I want to say thank you to every single person in our community and the community abroad that is given. The dollars that have been given for this event, appreciate you. The dollars that have been given for this event have reached upwards of $125,000. Those Champions for Children dollars go directly to Safe Harbor, and Safe Harbor is really a homeless shelter for children, for mothers, but they also pour into a host of other wraparound services such as rapid rehousing. And so I just want to say thank you to our community for really raising the bar and pouring into that organization who does have real programmatic framework around solving our homelessness issues that affects a whole host of people. So right now, they are sitting at $125,000, and we want to thank everyone. 70% of those people were new. They were just getting in, just adding their name to the rolls of helping, and they've had over 500 donors. So if you know anybody, I was a champion. I'm sure I will not win or raise the most money, but thank you to those who gave. And there were several other community people who were champions. If you know them, we got until about, I think it's 7 or 8 o'clock to donate. So make sure you donate, because that does pour into how our community does truly work on the homelessness issue in a real way, and shows that not only those on this desk up here, but also everyone in our community really does have a compassionate heart to solve these issues that are before us. With that, I am going to ask Miss Naomi to please come to the front. Is this on? Okay. Everyone who calls our office deals with Miss Naomi, and Miss Naomi keeps us in check, keeps me in check, keeps the entire staff in check. And we also, we deeply thank her for the work she does, not only for us, but for thereby you and the citizens of Brunswick. Oftentimes, she's the first and the last voice you hear. However, she also holds a much more important position. And that important position is the position of mother. And we want to have a proclamation because their family and her daughter had a very special moment that I think it's important that we talk about. I want you to bring your family up there here. Please. I was wondering who was looking so good for the commission. I was like, man, she done dressed up to yell at me today. From the mayor and city council of Brunswick, Georgia, proclamation. Whereas Brunswick takes pride in our citizens who not only impact our community, but extend their gifts to the world around us. And whereas on May 4th, 2023, Marla Elizabeth Atkinson, a Brunswick native, achieved what roughly 2% of the American population has by earning a doctorate degree in physical therapy from the University of Florida with a focus on geriatric care. I'm gonna need that in there. And whereas of that 2% of Americans with a doctoral degree, only a small fraction are African American, a figure Marla seeks to change with her work on the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Advisory Committee for the Department of Physical Therapy at the University of Florida, creating inclusive pathways for future generations of all backgrounds and abilities. And whereas Marla's passion, dedication, and willingness to help has persisted since adolescence, starting with her volunteerism at Brunswick Senior Center and across the globe, where Marla traveled to Vietnam to build prosthetics for vulnerable populations in need. And whereas Marla is a smart, poised, and dutiful young woman with a tenacious spirit that advocates for the most disadvantaged and embraces selfless participation. Now, therefore, I, Cosby H. Johnson, as mayor of the city of Brunswick, along with my fellow commissioners, congratulate Dr. Marla Elizabeth Atkinson for earning her doctorate degree in physical therapy and wish Dr. Atkinson continued success in her professional journey. I'm not going to put them on the spot unless you want to say something, but you're more than welcome to say something.
thank you. I'm very grateful. Loud. But I'm just very thankful and humbled by all of this. I'm very surprised. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, he's not gonna do.
I just want to say that what I missed is I missed Girl Scout cookies.
We have one more point of order. And I would like to call to the front, Mr. Ryan Ranking and his family, please.
Where's Coach?
How y'all doing? Is Coach here? Is Coach in the back? Like a good coach, you don't
Okay.
want to stand in front. Man, I did not know you was this tall when I agreed to read this. I would have read it from up there. Ryan is a special young man, and I don't know if you all read the newspaper at all, but if you do, you will know that we have a record breaker in the house tonight. Mr. Rankin has a special ability, but more than his special ability, the thing that I've seen in him is his hard work and dedication continues to shine a light, not only on our city, not only on himself, but also his family. And that light continues to reverberate and will reverberate a long time, because I don't know when someone's ever going to get close to this record. And so with that, I want to present you with a certificate of recognition from myself and our city commission, presented to Mr. Ryan Rankin, in recognition of your win at the Georgia High School Track and Field State Championship, where you not only defended your title, but broke the state record held since 1983 by clearing 7 feet, 3.75 inches. The impact you have in the world of sports is sure to continue at the University of Georgia. You are an impressive, polished, and prepared young man, making your family, peers, and your city of Brunswick proud. The City of Brunswick Mayor and City Commission congratulate you on your hard work and wishes you continued success as you progress through college and beyond.
Mayor, can I add that he's also ranked #1 in the nation, not just the state, in the nation. All right.
We'll now have a proclamation presented to the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary Brunswick Station for National Safe Boating Week. He can come to the front. Number one, we want to thank you all for your service, not only to our community and state, but also to the nation. Whereas National Safe Boating Week brings attention to important life-saving tips for recreational boaters so that they can have a safer, more fun experience on the water throughout the year. And whereas for over 100 million Americans, boating continues to be a popular recreational activity, and the U.S. Coast Guard and its federal, state, and local safe partners encourage all boaters to explore and enjoy America's beautiful waters responsibly. And whereas on average, 650 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S., 75% of these are fatalities caused by drowning. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today had they worn their life jackets. And whereas safe boating begins with education and preparation, as human error accounts for most boating accidents rather than the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas through basic boating safety procedures, we can help bolster on America's water stay safe year-round calendar. Now, therefore, I, Cosby H. Johnson, as mayor of the city of Brunswick, along with my fellow commissioners, do hereby recognize May 20th through the 26th, 2023, as National Safe Boating Week in the city of Brunswick, Georgia, and urge all those who boat to practice safe boating habits and always wear a life jacket while boating. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 2B, which is consider approval of proclamation for the city of Brunswick's second annual wellness walk, run, bike. City Manager McDuffie. Oh, wow. Let me tell you, thank you to my third grade teacher for helping me learn how to read. Proclamation. Whereas the city of Brunswick recognizes the adverse impact and long-term effects on the COVID pandemic on the health and wellness of the community. And whereas the city of Brunswick seeks to identify ways to provide meaningful engagement of the community in response to the epidemic. And whereas the city of Brunswick has begun a wellness campaign to promote awareness and better health for its employees in the community. And whereas the city of Brunswick also supports unity in the community, encourages participations for all residents, citizens, and visitors alike. And whereas the Wellness Walk, Run, Bike event will be an annual wellness activity to promote awareness and health education for its employees and the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners for the City of Brunswick that by adoption of this proclamation, the Board of Commissioners hereby proclaim June 3rd, 2023 as Community Wellness Day and encourage all employees, residents, citizens, and visitors to participate in the Wellness Walk, Run, Bike, and activities scheduled for Saturday, June 3rd, 2022, in the interests of better health and quality of life for all. Amen. Wonderful. With that, we will move down to recognition of Historic Preservation Award winners. Director Hunter.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission, and I'm going to turn this over to Josh Dukes, one of the members of our Historic Preservation Board.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for letting us be here today. Established in 1973 by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, May is recognized as Historic Preservation Month. Recognizing this, the City of Brunswick Historic Preservation Board and the Historic Brunswick Foundation have come together to recognize the great work that has been done preserving, rehabilitating, and adapting the historic fabric of our city by residents and businesses. The Brunswick Historic Preservation Board nominated projects completed within the last year, and an online poll was created with residential and commercial categories. Winners in the online poll will receive People's Choice Awards. Members of the Historic Preservation Board also selected projects to receive awards for excellence in preservation to recognize worthy projects that exemplified the positive impact of preservation in our community. And so we'd like to announce those winners tonight. For the People's Choice Awards, if you're here, please come forward. For rehabilitation of a residential property, 1205 Union Street, Rico Washington and Giovanni Banks. You can see the before and after over here. For rehabilitation of a commercial property, The Cress, Tommy McGraw. For new infill construction, St. Francis Xavier School, Father Tim McKeon. And now the board's Excellence in Preservation Award winners. 908 Carpenter Street, Suzanne Hurley and George Zaras. Maybe one of the most visible, so last and certainly not least, we'd like to recognize the Visitors Club, the Torres Foundation, Michael Torres and Darren Peesh, and the Visitors Club Preservation Fund, Miriam Lancaster, Sandra Colhard, and Pat Featherstone. Thank you.
We will now move on to our public hearing on land use. Director Hunter, consider approval of 90% site plan 3302 Glen Avenue.
Sorry, I appreciate you letting me get organized here. As you recall, back in October 2022, the City Commission approved the rezoning and annexation for 3302 Glen Avenue. As a part of that rezoning, a conceptual plan was approved, as well as plan development text that would guide the development of that property. As part of your approval, you requested that the applicant, as they develop their plan, come back to the City Commission and the Planning Commission for reviews and approval at the 50% level, and then come to this body at the 90% level to see how this plan developed from concept to closer to reality. As you can see from the concept plan to the 90% plan, you see some very common changes that reflect what happens as you start to implement constrictions to a development site and put them into your actual development plan. Maritime Homes' original concept called for on the 3302 Glen Avenue property 228 parking spaces, 228 apartment units, along with associated parking and infrastructure. That that number was reduced to a proposed 204 apartment units comprised of seven 3-story, 24-unit buildings, one 3-story, 36-unit building, an office, a fitness center, pool, and associated parking on 13.98 acres. So as a part of a typical development, staff would review a prospective site plan as part of our design review team. And there are many different elements that go into the review of a site plan as people prepare for construction documents. In this case, the staff reviewed the site plan for a number of tasks. The first was for consistency with the plan development text that was approved by this body. Within that review for consistency with PD text, we look for things such as the standards that have been established by the PD text, water and sewer connections that are required, and some stormwater elements. The second review task that we looked at is a review for consistency with the concept plan. As I mentioned, we started off with a larger development that as the developer started looking at stormwater retention requirements, parking requirements, buffer requirements, all of that altered the plan to where it came to slightly different from a reduced scope standpoint. They reduced the number of buildings from 9 to 8, reduced the number of units to 204. The locations of buildings shifted a little bit, and all this was done to accommodate the infrastructure needs. The third task was to review for our general regulations and ordinance. This generally involves a cursory review by the planning, engineering, public works, and the fire marshal. There are a number of elements within that are looked at: parking, the buffers, flood damage prevention, our freeboard requirement, stormwater requirements, sanitation requirements, fire access, right-of-way access, water and sewer connectivity, and density. Of those items within the third task, the only item that was non-compliant was the parking. The fourth task was to review the site plan for consistency with the US 17 overlay district and the Glen Avenue design framework. As y'all are aware, US 17 is an overlay that places design guidelines on top of our regular zoning to help guide the development process and the form of buildings, materials of buildings, landscaping, and a number of different elements. So we reviewed the proposed project against the guiding and design principles, the tree and landscape requirements, ensured that the 45-foot marsh buffer was in place. We looked at the connectivity of the sidewalks within the project, even down to elements like required bike racks that are required at commercial and multifamily buildings. We looked at the percentage of lot coverage. We ensured that planning is put forward for the utilities to be underground, and we looked at the access to US 17. All of those elements were found to be in compliance. As I mentioned, the only non-compliant item is parking. The required amount of parking was 408 parking spaces for the number of units that are proposed. There are 311 parking spaces provided on site. To solve this, the applicant provided two options for consideration. Option A would be to approve a 1.5 space per unit ratio for the site. Option B would be to look at shared parking as an opportunity on an adjacent parcel that would provide 97 spaces. shared parking on adjacent parcels or blocks is allowed and is encouraged under the Glen Avenue Design Framework. From all this, the staff took a recommendation to the Planning and Appeals Commission to approve the site plan with option B for shared parking on the neighboring parcel. The site plan was reviewed by the Planning and Appeals Commission at a couple of at one public meeting and an additional, one public hearing and an additional public meeting. The Planning and Appeals Commission voted 4-1 to recommend to the commission that the site plan be denied. Staff comes before you today with a recommendation of approval of the 90% site plan with option B for shared parking. Staff does not recommend any additional conditions required by the city commission. However, there are a couple of concerns that do need to be recognized. The first concern that has been expressed about potential stormwater infrastructure that has been installed by Marshview condos. And my understanding from talking with residents there is that it potentially that infrastructure comes onto the neighboring property before it reconnects to Marshview and then drains out to the marsh. As far as we could tell, there are no protective easements associated with that. So we would stress that it would be in the best interest of all parties, both Marshview and the Maritime Homes, to work together to resolve this issue. It is not city infrastructure, so it is not something that we have an easement in place to control, or it's not our responsibility to go in and remove or alter these this drain infrastructure. The second concern is the potential need for signalization of the Glen Avenue Redwood Street intersection. This is the proposed access point for the development. It is an existing intersection, and it is the most logical place to put traffic from the development into US 17. Preliminary information provided by the development team indicates that GDOT might not require signalization at this intersection. Staff believes that it would be proper for the city commission to address that with GDOT and ask that they seriously consider those concerns when looking at this project. That summarizes the process to date and the staff recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have representatives from the developer here who would like an opportunity to present additional information as well and answer questions.
I would ask, do we have any questions for Director Hunter at this time?
I do. Just as a point of clarification on what we are making a decision on tonight are we also taking into consideration the stormwater infrastructure issue or the traffic?
So this is a little bit of a new area for all of us. The purpose behind this site plan review was so that in my opinion, unless I'm interpreting it incorrectly from what the directive was that we could see the work as it progressed. As you've heard in my review, staff has found all of the elements within this site plan, with the exception of the parking, to meet our ordinances and our guidelines for that area. So what we are asking for is an approval of the site plan with a recommendation about the best option in your mind for addressing the parking. Or your option would be to reject the site plan and ask them to go back and do more work. as I understand it.
So again, for clarification, is it correct if I said that in order for the developer to get full permitting to start construction, the issues with the stormwater infrastructure and the traffic signaling or control ingress egress would all have to get settled before they were granted a permit?
Before they would need be able to get granted a building permit, correct?
Okay.
So the next phase for them in this process is with the parameters of the site now firm. They have a great deal of work that's got to be done on the design side for both civil engineering, which would address the stormwater infrastructure, the parking, the water and sewer components. For a project like this, we're probably looking at a very extensive design packet. I'd say probably easily in the neighborhood, well over 50 pages of just civil engineering drawings for us to review, as well as geotechnical reports. So we're looking at the soils conditions and how that's going to interplay with our stormwater requirements, how that's also going to impact their foundation designs, all of that, as well as their architectural drawings. Will need to come through this. They'll still need to go through the permitting process with GDOT. They'll still need to go through potential permitting for the stormwater with DNR. There are still lots of steps forward before they turn dirt. What we have to do is provide them the certainty of this proposed site plan is in accordance with the direction that the city commission feels they should go in.
Okay, so we're really just trying to surmount the issue about the additional 97 parking spaces.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't have further questions at this point.
John, this is Commissioner Harris.
Yes, ma'am.
What, the question I have is, the ordinance requires a master plan for the whole project. And they only submitted a site plan for 13 acres. What's the matter on that? That's my first question.
Okay.
Because it seems as if we're going against our own zoning ordinance in this matter. And then my next question is, why did the PAC deny it?
Why? I didn't hear the last part of her question.
Why did the PAC deny it? So to answer the first question, we are not going against our ordinances.
Okay.
The concept plan that was approved, it was looking at the entire project site. It is not uncommon for planned developments to be developed in phases. This is their first phase. It's focusing on this portion of the planned development that was intended to be apartments. So I would see it as being consistent with the planned development and a typical development process.
Okay, so when we give, did they submit an overall master plan?
They did. Yes, they did.
Okay, and so what we're doing at this point is we're taking portions of that plan.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
approving them as they are further developed with any comments or concerns from the community.
That's
or comments
correct.
or concerns that we have.
Yes, that's correct. And I just flipped back on the screen. I don't know if you're able to see or not, but the drawing that is up now was the original conceptual plan for the entire site. So the left-hand side of your screen is what was proposed for the apartment site. The next slide zooms into that. So we're looking at just the apartments. And as I mentioned, they did reduce the number of units. You can see now where things like their tree requirements are being addressed. The the kind of dotted area on the left-hand side of the drawing is the marsh buffer. You have a pond reflective of where their stormwater is going to be captured before it is released, even down to some of the detail like, and this is getting into probably too much of the level of detail, but this is going to be a site that has some differences from our flood prevention ordinance, where there is something called the limited to moderate wave action line, which changes the zone and how they can approach the foundations of their buildings. So that's reflected in this site plan as well. So we've got an idea of which buildings they have are going to need a different foundation system and different flood requirements than the rest of the property. So it is a pretty extensive look at what their needs are. Did that satisfy your first question, Commissioner?
Yes, that answered my first question.
Okay. As to the second one, the PAC really felt that there should be, and I'm not going to presuppose to speak for all the members, but in general, they felt more work should have been done about the parking, whether it was to address parking on site or actually to better reflect the shared parking off-site. They felt like there needed to be more work with that. There's that would, I think, best capture that.
Okay. Any additional questions for Director Hunter? Thank you, Director Hunter.
I just have one
Yes, ma'am.
point of clarification. On the property that, the subject property,
Yes.
the only area that we would consider a marsh view technically is where the detention pond is going to be, because the other portion of the marsh is really more wetlands, is it not? And it runs perpendicular to.
Based on the classifications that DNR gives, I'm going to go off the information provided that they're classifying all of that as marsh. What you qualify as a marsh view, I don't know that that's,
Yeah.
That could be anything depending on how you're oriented at the site.
Yeah. But I think from the developer standpoint, they have utilized, they have adhered to that 45-foot setback,
Right.
As sort of private realm, more or less, but they have utilized a picnic area and I think a playground or some other things, the tree canopy, et cetera, that would be nice amenities for the residents of that community.
Correct. And that was really the intent of the 45-foot
Yeah.
buffer, is partly a recognition that we already have a buffer in that area,
Yeah.
but to provide additional green space within a development that was restricted in terms of what type of amenities could be there. So a picnic area could be there. Pathways could be there, playgrounds could be there. It could just be general green space. If this community had a little bit better access to water, they could build a community dock as long as they went through the DNR permitting process. But that would be the type of amenity that they could add. That would be a bonus for the people living there.
Okay.
I know we talked about this a lot. We talked about this a good bit at the PAC. And I know at the time that the Glen Avenue Design Framework was approved, that the concept of big P, meaning broad general public opportunities, and little p, meaning the residents within whether a private development or a commercial development that was taking advantage of marsh views by locating their restaurant so that it overlooked that there would be opportunities for both. And the 45-foot buffer helped emphasize that. It also helps our as part of our flood prevention program, our flood insurance,
Mhm.
because it moves that development further away from that waterfront.
Okay. And so, I mean, technically, it is a private development.
Yes.
It is a private residential development. There's no expectation for public access any more so than there would be in somebody's backyard or marsh views area. If somebody wanted to come see the marsh,
Yeah.
they would be on private property.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I know you and Commissioner Kaysen both fought the battle with us on
Mhm.
that. And really the intent overriding everything is the green space opportunity there. How it is utilized on the private side or on the public side, we provided some options. But the idea there is that it is valuable and let's work at ways to take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you.
And so, John, with that being said, of the emphasis that Commissioner Martin just said, and talking about the public versus the private. So is there not a commercial element to this development as well?
There is not this phase, there is a commercial. I'll flip back to the other plan, the other plan. There is a commercial proposed along 17, as well as the townhomes behind it. Those will come in later phases. We'll have to bring those back for a similar review for y'all as well.
Okay, and so how would that be comparable to the access of the waterfront on the commercial side? Because now you are bringing in the public perspective.
Well, so they're not proposing the commercial to be adjacent to that waterfront or that marsh. It is putting it along 17. So
Just on 17.
Yeah, in this instance, there would not be a commercial opportunity that would impact that buffer or that view shed. And that's part of the development process. If the developer chose and they wanted to put their commercial back onto that marsh front, that's part of this whole opportunity. I would agree with their concept that that's not really the highest best use for that marsh front area. It's better suited in this portion of the corridor to have the commercial fronting 17.
Okay, so and I asked you this before, and I'm going to ask it now. Within this development, and I'm recalling your response, affordable housing opportunities within this development. I know we're looking at market rate, but are we looking at any percentage of affordability?
To my knowledge,
I'm saying that I'm saying that publicly, John, so that the developers can hear me with that. Because we've got a lot of developers that are coming and that are proposing market rate housing and not affordable housing. Market rate is not affordable housing. And we know that there is a need for both of those to be filled as we're dealing with our housing stock, not only in the city, but in the county as well. So I wanted to put that out so that the developer can hear that as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate that feedback. And there is, as far as I know, no plan in place for affordable housing as part of this development. It is a definite need, and something I think we continually are looking at. As I know y'all have seen our draft of our housing study that we sent out last week. We also do have a need for new market rate housing within the city. That is something that we're honestly, based on the housing study we've done, there's a need for all types of housing within the city of Brunswick in order for it to thrive going into the future. So, we have to look at best opportunities and the best ways to foster all types of housing development in the city. We've worked really hard over the last few years getting the Perry Place project open that took us, I think, multiple stops and starts to get that one done, just like Norwich Commons did. I feel very confident that there are people out there hearing that, in addition to market rate opportunities in Brunswick, there are many other opportunities for housing where if they're willing to partner, whether that's with the city or with other groups to help address that we're willing to work with those things.
And that's where another variation of mixed use development can be employed. Not just mixed use with commercial, but mixed use with market rate and affordable housing.
Any additional questions for Director Hunter?
Now we're at 90%. They acquired some additional acreage. Is that included here?
That is not no, there's not. And this plan does not consider that at this time. My understanding is that we are going to be focused on solving the parking issue here as it relates to this. To my knowledge, it does not involve the additional parcel at this time.
I didn't hear the question.
So the question was, there's potential purchase of the undeveloped portion of Marshview. I'd just say that is an undeveloped parcel that could be part of this development. And Commissioner Kaysen asked if that was part of what we were reviewing tonight. And is it something we're going to be considering as part of this tonight?
They've acquired additional acreage back there.
Yeah.
I can't hear Johnny. Is his mic on?
Yeah. Is that better?
There you go.
We
Much
checked that
better.
before this thing goes off by itself.
So Commissioner, to get to your point, I think that's an appropriate question for the development team when they come up to answer questions.
Well, I think it's an appropriate answer or
Yeah.
question to ask you, John, who've been working with
Yeah,
this
and
thing.
there had been some previous consideration of that. And frankly, there had been some plans previewed in the past. But my understanding is right now that's not on the table for this part of the development.
We want to be sure of that.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And another thing that I have listened to up here that I want to be sure is said before we do anything. The developer has been asked many times to get with folks about concerns like what is going on and how affected, say, Marshview is going to be. And this drainage thing has been going on since the first time I ever heard anything about the project. And I'll tell you, the next morning, I got up and I called John Hunter and Garrow Albertson, and I asked y'all to get together with these guys on exactly what we're talking about still tonight. It has not been done. It has not. I mean, it's up to us. The people in Marshview have some respect to be gained by the folks that work for the city of Brunswick and the city commission up here. A lot of respect. Okay, they've been there a long time. And that's what my real problem with this whole thing is. It's not the fact that it's going to be developed, but it's the fact that we haven't really and truly initiated the right methods to do all this thing. It's just all the way through the whole program. But these are just a couple of things. The thing about the drainage, we should have helped these people to facilitate, to be there today, to where this would be an accepted thing instead of be problematic. Whether it belongs to the city or it doesn't is neither here nor there. It affects our residents. Okay.
And I hear your point, and I have heard that same concern many
I'm
throughout
telling
this
you,
process.
the day after I heard that, I called and asked for it to be looked at and to
And,
be studied.
and I have gone out and looked at the drainage concern. I've spoken with a couple of residents about it to get a better understanding of what it is. Frankly, until I get to the design drawing stage so that there's something really for us to review, I can't really determine how that, yeah, is it going to impact it? Yeah, I know it's going to impact it.
Absolutely, it is.
It is going to impact it.
Yeah.
But we have to have that level of design document to say, here's where those lines are. Here's what our drainage plan is. Here's where our building is going to be. A, it doesn't touch the infrastructure. B, it does. I'm be more than happy. And I don't think Garrow would have an issue with it either. When those plans come in, if we're not able to assess that correctly, then those are questions that we've got to ask back to the developer as part of that construction review process. Because at this point, it's a very well-known item. I don't know how else you would like us
Well,
to
I
address
just want
that.
to point out that I took
Yeah.
my time when I realized that there was a problem to call two people. One was you, one was Garrow Albertson. I asked y'all to get together and start addressing this problem so that wouldn't be here today. It could be resolved, John.
I don't, I hear what you're saying, sir.
It's similar
think-
to, well, I've got another one here. The traffic out there. We're not doing anything to address that traffic out there. And I realize that's not what this, but we should be working on it. We should have some answers. We shouldn't be standing there being told that you recommend us to come back to Georgia Department of Transportation about a red light out there. This should be worked on every single day. It should be out there. We're going to have this development. We want to expedite it. We don't want it to be held up.
Commissioner,
And I'm going to yield to you. Go right ahead, please.
well, as you stated, you asked two department heads.
Yes.
Two department heads. You did not ask the city manager. The thing is, that drain line is on private property.
I understand
And
that.
basically, yes, there could have been conversations, but at this
Yeah.
point in the approval process, that has not been rectified. And it shouldn't be until that comes before the design team. Same as with the traffic.
Well, I totally disagree with you.
Well,
Totally.
that's the
Totally
process that
disagree.
we're
These
under
are the
right now.
things that should have been being worked on. So this would be a pretty much a no-brainer here tonight. Everybody wants this thing done. There's nobody up here that doesn't want it done. It needs to be done right. That's what needs to happen here. And it's going to take a lot of effort on a lot of people's parts to get through this. If what I'm doing tonight helps to move it forward somewhere, which I hope it does, instead of sitting here saying it's got to come back before the commission, these things with the traffic out there and drainage have been out there long enough. We've known about it. How easy would it have been to sit down at the table? And Regina, I want to say this. I did ask you to get to the Riverside people and sit down with them and to see if they wanted to have a meeting. I never heard anything back, but I'm not here to discuss that. I really don't want to. I want to say that some things could have been done so that we were not in this situation tonight. And my honest, humble feeling up here tonight, it just didn't get done. And here we are again questioning an awful lot of stuff up here that the planning commission voted to not approve this thing. They put it on us for a reason, okay? So we want to go ahead with it. We want to help the developer, but I'm still saying that the people that are out there that are being affected by this thing, we owe them some respect. The developer owes them some respect. Thank you.
I want to before you go, I want to say that know that I've worked directly with Director Hunter and others on staff to rectify a whole host of questions and answers and concessions and work, not only with those of both communities whom I have taken the time to not only ask you guys to meet with them, but to also meet with them personally and go out there and walk the property to see their concerns. And I realize that some of those concerns have not been rectified. There are direct concerns that we've talked about with adjacent properties. And I know we've taken those concerns to the developer, and for some of those concerns, I think we have seen some concessions. So the reason I bring that up is not to highlight anything in particular or any concession in particular, but to highlight the fact that I do believe staff has worked diligently with all sides of this, and staff is oftentimes put in very difficult positions between not only 5 commissioners, but their boss with the city manager, as well as community members and developers. So I know that you've taken the time to show that respect to our community members and your fellow citizens, because you live in Brunswick as well. I know we have someone here from the engineering firm that kind of worked on these renderings. So if we could ask that person to come up. Hold on. No. Wait a second. If you could take the question to either Devani or Miss Atkinson, they can figure it out for you.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Jonathan Roberts with Roberts Civil Engineering, and thank you for your time tonight to present the Island View project. I wanted to hit a few highlights. Mr. Hunter did a good job explaining the history and some of the progress from the concept to the current site plan, and I'm going to elaborate on some of those same items right now. So we've got the site plan that's proposed has 311 parking spaces, as he talked about, but we believe, based on other projects, that we only need 225. There's a very similar project in Glenn County, and we've done traffic or parking counts repeatedly to see what on average is used. And we think we need about 225. So on site, we have 311. But we want to make sure that you guys feel comfortable meeting the full 2-to-1 parking ratio. So we've got a concept that shares parking on the commercial site to the south, and there's 100 spaces proposed there. And that's a great type of compatible use to share with, because it's commercial retail, and those parking spaces would be used at a different time of day than the residential. So with this concept, it meets the 2-to-1 requirement. It's 411 spaces altogether, well above the 225 that we think we need, but also above the 408 that strictly meets the 2-to-1 ratio. The trees are another important thing on this site. The other development that I mentioned does not have as many trees as this site will. The developer is very interested in making this a much better landscape project, and he's proposing 41 oak trees, minimal 41. And he said yesterday that he actually wants to plant more than that. And what's very unique about this site, only 2 oak trees that are specimen trees are coming down. There's a 25-inch oak and a 30-inch oak, and it's largely because that site was already developed previously. So we're adding 41 really nice oak trees. We're taking down 2 nice oak trees. The drainage has been brought up repeatedly, and this is an engineer's dream site to design for drainage. A site like this that's along the marsh is very easy to make work from a drainage standpoint. And the details of that drainage design will be further developed in the construction plan phase of the project. But conceptually, right now, we've got a rather large detention pond right along the marsh that will easily accommodate this development. And I am certain that we can come up with a solution for Marsh View as well during that process. It's also also been mentioned about DOT. DOT has jurisdiction on these curb cuts, and DOT is going to be very interested in the safety of the access way and US 17. We've been in communication with DOT. They understand the concept and it looks viable. But for this project to move forward to full construction, DOT will have to give a permit and sign off on the safety of the access and US 17.
So is that gonna take into consideration the full amount, this is phase 1 plus phase 2, where having a signal light is gonna have the impact needed when you take both of those parcels into
Well,
consideration?
we want them to consider both for economies of
Yeah.
scale too. So
Right.
definitely we'll show DOT both concepts. That's right. All right, and now I've got slides for every line item in the design framework, and I want you guys to tell me, do you want me to go through every line item? And it'll take 10, 15 minutes. I'm happy to do that, but I want to show that we are compliant with the design guidelines as Mr. Hunter has explained, but also want to be respectful for your time. So you guys tell me.
And I think it is important for the record's sake. So
Okay,
please.
very good. So the purpose of the design framework is the city initiated this for the decline, because of the decline in disinvestment of commercial areas along Glen Avenue. Well, this is the site. This may be very well the front and center site that was contemplated when that design framework was created. And the goals is to have an active place, create a sense of place, to have market realism, and to have community predictability. This project is going to transform the site from an abandoned commercial property into a new apartment complex that's vibrant and full of life. It's going to have, it'll incubate additional incremental investment along the Highway 17 corridor. And it'll provide continued predictable growth in the area because of the additional residents that create demand for other services and businesses. The guiding principles of the design framework are the architecture, the accessible marshes, the minimal impact to the natural environment, safe access for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists, respect and contribute positively to the public realm, should evolve into an activity center to complement downtown, and it should be there should be investments in the public realm to guide and enhance private sector investment. This project does all of those things, and we'll go through them one by one. The appropriate architecture, certainly this is a nice new modern apartment building. With the exception, it'll have better landscaping. There's going to be oak trees around the entire perimeter of the property and in most of the green spaces where there's available space. Yes, sir.
Have these apartments been built anywhere else close to us?
They have. Yes, sir.
Where are they?
They're on Old Cypress Mill, and they've got this development team. Another great thing about this development team, when they tell you they're going to build this, they're going to build it, and it's going to be fast.
Have
And
you
they
been asked this question before, Jonathan?
Sir?
Have you been asked this question before? Are they somewhere else? What, John, have you seen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Old Cypress Mill Road in Glenn County.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the name of those apartments?
Coastal Club is one. They're in process of building another over near the mall on Chapel Crossing. So when this development team says they're going to build it, it's going to get built. If it's approved, it'll get built
These are
fast.
built by Maritime Homes.
It was a different entity, I believe, when they built Coastal Club, but it's the same team members.
Okay, thank you.
But again, this is going to be better because it's going to have more oak trees and it's going to be a lot more elaborate landscaping. But the appropriate architecture, I think this is a much better look than what was there with the old abandoned hotel. The accessible marshes, vistas, and natural resources. The 45-foot corridor that we're protecting along the marsh is nearly double what's required by the state. And that's an item that the developer agreed to early on because it's part of the design guidelines, and it really sets the stage for additional development parcels that would contribute a similar amount. And over time, there could be an access way from here all the way downtown, which I think is one of the goals of the design framework. The minimal impact of the natural environment. So the salt marsh will not be impacted, and there's freshwater wetlands that will also be maintained as is. So we're going to protect the natural environment on this site. There's going to be safe access for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists. We're planning sidewalk improvements along Highway 17, and it will have safe ingress and egress for those cyclists, motorists, and pedestrians. The guiding principles say that it should respect and contribute positively to the public realm. And Glen Avenue should evolve into an activity center complementary to downtown, and it should create investment in the public realm to guide and enhance private sector development. Well, this project does all of those things. It sets it up so that there could be eventual connectivity along that 45-foot corridor to downtown. It's going to have certainly people that want to come spend their money downtown. And then it's also going to contribute more than $300,000 a year in estimated additional taxes for the county and the city. That site right now, is my understanding, only contributes around a little over $12,000 a year to city and county taxes. And this will be more than $300,000 estimated in addition to that. The design principles hit on public waterfront and public space, pedestrian orientation, mixed use environment, blocks and streets, quality design, and sense of place. And we meet all of those. The public waterfront and public space, we've mentioned many times the 45 feet along the marsh, and we've added some picnic tables and some actual areas for the public to use along that 45 feet. The pedestrian orientation, we've got the improvements on Highway 17. The mixed use environment, this residential development will support the mixed use next door for the commercial and retail. The blocks and streets, it provides benches, street lights, trash facilities, and sidewalks. Quality design, architecture, and site design will have a renewed appeal. It'll be real estate that should be appreciating in value, which will help the tax rolls year after year. And the sense of place will provide hundreds of people an opportunity for a home in Brunswick, and they'll be shopping downtown and in the city. Sustainable practices, green space, non-motorized transportation, coastal conservation, canopy trees, and sustainable building practices. Again, we meet all of those. The project includes 9.23 acres of green space, and that consists of the marsh areas, lawn areas, and protected wetlands. The non-motorized transportation, it's got the additional buffer along the marsh, and that will complement the future pedestrian way, but the public access to the city's transportation route will be determined. But we think this project will be fundamental to the precedent for that. The coastal conservation, again, the marsh buffer, canopy trees, we've got 41, it says over 40, but it's 41 live oaks that will be planted. And again, only 2 taken down that are specimen trees. And the sustainable building practices, they are efficient, and this developer is one of the best I've ever seen at being efficient with their development. So the use of materials will be very efficient, and the timeliness of this will be very efficient. The general provisions in Chapter 2 talk about the actual location, and this site fits in that location. The streets and blocks, general provisions talks about the pedestrian comfort. And so we're going to have the safety and sidewalk improvements that help with pedestrian comfort. The access management, we're proposing no new curb cuts. This is reusing an existing curb cut, and it will consider interparcel access to the property to the south. There's the marsh that cuts off the property to the south, so that to the extent we can connect it, we would like to. We may not be able to because of DNR rules. The blocks north of Torres Causeway, existing streets shall remain fully open. All of the existing streets in the area will remain fully open with this plan. Alleys and lanes, the use of alleys and lanes are encouraged. This has several lanes to access each building and allows for egress and throughout the property. And then the thoroughfare standards, that section guides the design of thoroughfares in the district, and this project doesn't propose any change to the thoroughfare. There are 2 regulating districts, which include the Glen Avenue frontage and the local access frontage. A portion of Island View in the Glen Avenue frontage district and a portion in the local access frontage district comprise this property. The building disposition requires newly platted lots and buildings comply, and it will comply with those provisions. So the parking's been a big item all along. Everyone's heard about the parking, but the design guidelines have a lot of requirements for parking. And all along, we've been complying with all of these provisions for parking, with the exception of the ratio. And now we've got the plan to comply with the ratio by sharing the parking to the south. So, you know, the on-street parking, we don't have any proposed on-street parking on Highway 17. The parking reduction, that's the provision that allows for sharing, and that is what we propose. And we encourage you to vote on that option rather than the 311 on site. Let's do the shared parking on the adjacent site and hit the 411, and then there's that's compliant on that item. The maximum parking, we can only do 120% of the maximum, and certainly that will be within that limit. The accessory units do not count toward density calculations. We're not counting those. And then retail spaces less than 2,000 feet are exempt, and that's not applicable. But then more parking provisions. Primary street frontages shall have no vehicular entries for properties. And Island View only has frontage on Highway 17, and that guideline is not applicable. Adjacent parking lots shall have vehicular connections via an alley or internal connectivity. It proposes to connect all of its parking areas with internal drive aisles. Parking lots for civic, small scale retail, office, residential uses may be left unpaved. It plans to pave the areas on site, but we would like to leave the commercial parking to the south unpaved until the time that that development is fully developed and the commercial is open. The parking area shall be masked from the street by building or street screen, and we plan to do that with landscaping. The parking areas and garages shall be located as required for each district, and we'll locate those as required, or they are located as required. Parking structures on primary corridors shall have liner buildings lining the first floor, and that provision is not applicable for this. Parking lots with 15 or more spaces, bicycle racks shall be provided, and we've got bike racks provided on this development to meet that. And side parking and required street screens shall begin no closer than the building front wall plane. And it does not propose side parking or street screens closer than that rule allows. And so there's numerous parking guidelines in this framework. And all along, we've been complying with all. And now, really based on the Planning Commission's direction, we've come up with a solution to provide the full amount of parking. Landscaping, we've mentioned it, the 2 specimen trees that are going to be removed, and they can't be removed without a permit, and certainly we would get that before those are removed. Prior to issuance of land disturbance, a site plan shall be approved with the specimen trees identified and those to be removed. We are doing that through this process. The removal of the specimen tree shall require replacement of 2 canopy trees. We're putting in 41. We're replacing the 2 with 41 new ones. At least 1 canopy tree is to be planted every 50 feet along the frontage, and we're proposing that. Canopy trees shall be planted in tree islands which have 400 square feet of unpaved area. We're planning to plant oak trees in every median. Islands shall not be separated by more than 12 parking spaces. The proposed site plan complies with that provision. The use of native vegetation is encouraged, and the live oak is our primary tree that we're planting, which is a native tree. Again, the landscaping, the stormwater management we've hit on, and that will comply with the City of Brunswick's provisions. And as an engineer, this site is going to be easy to design. The lighting will be designed to minimize light trespassing glare as provided in these guidelines. And the guidelines here are very specific about the 90 degrees on the light emission, and we'll comply with those standards. And then the utilities and screening. Utilities shall be located underground. We're proposing underground utilities. Where lanes are provided, utilities shall be located within the lane right of way. Again, we're proposing underground utilities. And then the screens required for dumpsters, outside storage, mechanical equipment, et cetera. We propose to adhere to those guidelines. So in conclusion, we've done a lot. We've spent a lot of time pouring through these design guidelines and tweaking the site. And one of the big reasons the site has changed from concept stage to now at site plan stage is because of these guidelines. And we've heard over and over about the parking count and some on the traffic and some on the drainage. Well, there are a lot of guidelines in addition to those. And I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to walk through those, and the traffic and the drainage, more design is to come. And it's really set up on this concept stage so that the development team has assurance that the project is viable before going to a lot of expense on some of those other items. But I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys may have.
Any questions for Mr. Roberts?
I have one related to the parking, and that's the access between the subject parcel and the property to the south where the shared 97 spaces are going to be. I think I heard you say that you're not sure that there would be car passage between those two parcels.
Yeah, we'll have to coordinate that with the DNR. So that's officially marsh that separates the two. And it's possible to get permitting, but we haven't gone down that path yet.
Because there is a way to drive it now. But I mean, it's a construction site, so people that come in and can't find a parking place are gonna have to go back out on 17, turn right, loop around, come back to access.
It would be ideal to have the connectivity, and that will be the goal and something that we'll address on the construction plan. And if the good news is we don't think we're ever going to actually need those parking spaces based on the other projects that are similar.
Okay.
How many apartments are at coastal clubs that you referenced?
The exact number, I don't recall. I think it's around 250, but the developer could comment on that.
And they're going with 1.5.
So their rule for that jurisdiction was 1.5, and what we've counted is only 1.1, what they're actually using. And one distinction that's important, the city ordinance requires 2 spaces for every 1 apartment, even if it's a 4-bedroom apartment. These are all 2-bedroom apartments. And so it will require certainly less parking than a 4-bedroom equivalent.
You know, one of the things I'm thinking about is, and not getting hung up on pouring concrete, but if you ever intend to do something else with these things, you're sort of cutting your nose off, spite your face, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I've done just a little bit of this stuff, and I know it's better off to go ahead and add the parking up front. If you have plans down the road, you might be gonna build these things and sell them. I don't know.
Well,
don't have a inkling.
It's a great point too. And the developer really has a vested interest in making sure there's enough parking, because it would be hard.
And he stated that, and I
hard to
heard
rent
him
it.
loud and clear say that, and he is 100% right. He really is. But I'm just offering to you, you know, I've had a hobby in my life, and a little bit of it was this. And every ounce of concrete I poured that was not needed out on that job was used. Every ounce of it. And down the road, it's just going to be important to probably have 2 parking spaces per unit. That's my estimation. It's just trying to offer some help here, Jonathan.
We agree with you, and we would prefer you to approve the expanded parking concept.
Will there be pedestrian access between the 2 properties?
There-
I mean, or even if it's a 1 lane, it's private property. If there's a, we all grew up with the drawbridge. Well, some of y'all are not old enough, but some of us remember the drawbridges. It's 1 lane traffic. You had to wait your turn.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it'd be ideal to have it connected for a number of reasons, particularly when the commercial gets developed. That will be an amenity, almost an amenity for the apartment complex. That will make it very attractive for people to want to live there, to be able to walk over to the commercial.
Mhm. Mhm.
How will the public access the tables that you've got on the marsh?
So right now, it's the 45-foot marsh corridor goes right up to the sidewalk on Highway 17. And so they could walk from Highway 17 sidewalk to the back to the picnic tables.
Mr. Roberts, what was there before?
It was a dilapidated hotel and trailers.
And to your knowledge, when it was dilapidated trailers and a hotel, which I'm sure attracted all types of unwanted individuals. Was there public access to the marsh at that point in time that you could see?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Currently, with other developments that are in the area, whether you're talking about Marshview or Riverside, is there public access to the marsh that you see?
Not to my knowledge.
You said the state has a DNR, has a 25-foot buffer to protect wetland areas and things of that nature. From what I'm hearing, I just want to make sure I'm hearing this right. You all have not only complied with that, but you've also grown it out to 45 feet to be in compliance, not only with the city's regulations, but also to ensure that you all are now providing public access where there wasn't any.
That's correct.
Okay. And the camping, or not camping, I guess, cookout outside, tables, whatever, picnic area, that would be public access, right?
It will be, yes.
Yep. And so on you all's basic private property area, you all are creating public access for those who otherwise would never have had access to the marsh to have that access.
That's right.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. For something has to be approved to tell DOT how many people would even be back here for them to start to make an idea of what they would do about signalization. Am I correct?
That's true. That is correct. Yeah. There's more information and design to work out with DOT.
Okay. And DOT also runs 17. Am I correct?
They have jurisdiction. That's
They have
correct.
jurisdiction over 17. So the jurisdiction to make a decision about signalization on that, it isn't a yes or a no right now. It's yet to be determined because it has to go before DOT to make the decision.
That's correct.
Okay. And during that time, the city commission, the mayor, and others would be open to writing a letter in support of signalization in that space.
I think the DOT welcomes any type of input like that.
Okay. And when this was I guess, nuisance hotel and trailer park, you said that the money that came as a tax base to pour into the city was about how much?
The estimate that I saw from the developers council was just over $12,000.
Just over $12,000. And if the development happens to move forward, whether in this fashion or any kind of amended fashion, you all estimate adding $300,000.
The estimate was just north of 300,000.
Okay.
And that's for county and city.
Okay. County and city. And as I'm looking at your renderings now, from the first time I think they were first presented, you all, am I correct to say that you all have removed a building and added a detention pond for any foreseeable issues in stormwater?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And my last question, or my last couple questions, is the site that you looked at where you judged that they were using about 1.1 spaces, how old is that property?
That was developed in 2020 and 2019 to 2021, that time frame. Yeah.
Okay. I want to quickly go back to the trees, because you said even for the trees that are being removed, you guys got to come back to make sure you do that correctly. Am I correct?
Well, this it's my understanding, and John can correct me if I'm mistaken, but this process, I believe, takes care of that requirement.
Okay. And in that process, you all are also bringing 41 additional oaks to the property.
That's correct.
Okay. The parking spaces, you say you all estimate you'll need 225. Is that at the 1.1 ratio?
That's right.
Okay. And currently on the property, you have 311 parking spaces
That's
in
correct.
place. And in the 2 years that these other properties have been available to the market, have you ever seen parking at 100% capacity?
Never.
Okay. Have you had any complaints from those who live on those properties about parking or need for additional parking?
No.
And then you say there is an ability to add more when you all consider further development into the commercial side of things.
That's correct.
Okay. That is all of the questions I have. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, this is Commissioner Harris. I wanted to address something further on the parking. Okay, so I know the mayor just asked you to give some clarity. So is the 311 spaces as the design that we're currently looking at, or is that a projection that's inclusive of the shared parking?
That's the site. The parking on site is 311, and with the additional shared parking, we have 100 extra spaces for a total of 411.
Okay. That's what I want to make sure of.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Well, I know this has been a long, arduous process, and we have a public that's very intent on making sure this is going to follow the correct process and things are done in a proper order and a sequence, as I think Mr. Hunter has pointed out. And this is our first project, our first residential project that's going vertical on Highway 17. I think we all need to cheer. We have worked hard to set the stage for appropriate development along that corridor, and this is the very first one. It happens to be at the very north end of city boundaries, and even had to be partially annexed in. So I would like to make a motion that we approve
We have to do public
we have public
hearing.
I'm so
It's
sorry.
okay. It's okay. Hold on. 1 second. We got to sit down for a second. Let's do this in order. We're open for a public hearing. I will say this, and I tried to reiterate this at the last meeting, but I want to be very honest that this is how we're going to do it. If you want to speak for or against this project, I would ask that you stand up and come to the mic and form a line. If no one stands up behind the first person who comes to speak, I'm going to assume that that is the only person that wants to speak, and we will end that public comment time after that person. So if you would like to speak, I would ask that you stand up, come to the front, form a line, and we will move through those who would like to speak. And we will be we spent 2 minutes earlier. We will be doing a minute here. So a minute to a minute and a half. So we want to make sure we get everything in. Mr. Hart.
Yes, I appreciate you recognizing me.
Yes, sir.
My name is Hal Hart, and I want to thank this commission for the opportunity to speak tonight. Again, I'd like to recognize Mr. Hunter and his staff for his diligence in developing this new unwritten policy. It's been an enormous task, and they have undertaken. I think we all know that now. It is a huge project. On April, may I ask a question? Site or Plan B, does that include the 3 acres of highway commercial property to the north for the additional parking?
No.
It does not. So all the okay, well, that's okay, good. On April 12th, the Brunswick Planning and Appeals Commission voted to further approval of the 90% site plan for 2 months because of a lack of required parking. 2 weeks later, in a called meeting, the plan was denied because of a lack of required parking. In review of the past minutes, I've stated I support this project. I still do. What they left off, as I say, I do not agree with the number of trees being taken out, 58. We talk about 2, but there's really 58 trees coming out. Clear cutting, a lack of required parking, and the probable use and future use of Norman Street for access. I still feel that way. I would like to say that the required parking of this project is an ordinance of the city of Brunswick. It's the law. Has there been a variance request to reduce parking? I know of none. Is there?
I like to always say this, we don't interact because we would be up here all day.
Okay, well, that's a question you can ask.
Yep.
We all know the frustrations of not being able to find a parking space, but it should not be at your home. There's much discussion of this project not following the Glen Avenue design guidelines. In my viewpoint, the guidelines which this commission developed hard for and got approval for a set of subjective guidelines to which this commission voted to use a guide for future development of Glen Avenue. It is up to this commission tonight to decide, is this the development, what the future development of Glen Avenue is going to look like? There are already future developments that are on the drawing boards. Will these developments use this development as presented as a guideline? Is this what, as a city commissioner, you want? This commission is going to have to vote on that.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
May make one suggestion. Your
Yes,
Glen Avenue Street has got a lot of shoulds. It should be a lot of shalls. It's a very subjective document. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Miss Naomi, do we need name and address or anything? When you come up, can you make sure you state your name and your address for the record?
There's Rick O'Brien. I live in Marshview. It's the 1100 building.
Yes, sir.
Which is where the big backyard is now. My question is, the site plan that we've been looking at all night is not the one we were supplied last month. The site plan we were supplied last month shows where the plan on putting that extra parking lot around the current dog park, which is out there. It's going to be 100 spaces, all concrete, what is now green space. And there is no way you're going to have all the green you need back there for what they're going to be taking up. But the 100 and some spaces, they call it satellite parking. People are going to have to walk through the development to get to wherever they're going to their apartment or to leave the place. It's, I don't see how it's going to be feasible. But I was wondering if you have the site plan that we got last month that shows the picture of it.
Again, just for safety of time, you can send it to Miss Naomi and she'll make sure she gets it to us. Yep. We just want to make sure we don't want to end your time. Good to go. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Kathy Spence, 4120 Riverside Drive.
Yes, sir.
And I have no objection to the buildings and all. I am concerned about traffic on Riverside and Norman Street. And I'm not sure that the first phase affects it, but when I look at where the second phase is coming in, it's going to affect it greatly. So just something to think about. And I am highly concerned about it because their townhouses are going to dump right out their traffic right out onto Riverside. And I'm not sure that's a city street. Norman Street is a city street. So I would think that's going to be a city problem. Okay. That's my main concern.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll quit with it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, my name is David Pope, 333 East 45th Street, Savannah, Georgia. I'm a lawyer here representing 100 Miles to speak in opposition to this proposal. I want us to bring us back to what is before you tonight and not to promises of what's going to be done in the future, what Mr. Hunter hopes to be done, what the developer says will be done. All that is before you tonight is this proposal for the acreage that contains the apartment buildings. The separate parcel is not before you in any way, shape, or form. All of these promises that you've been made, all of these representations by Mr. Roberts are not enforceable. They're not written down. They're not before you. They all sound good, and let's hope they do them. In order for the city commission to approve a plan development, a PDG project, which this is, it first has to be approved by the get the name, what's it called? The PCA, the
Planning Commission.
Pardon?
PAC.
The PAC, I'm sorry, and the Board of Zoning Appeals. The ordinances say that in plain English. This rezoning never came before you properly in the first instance because it had not been pre-approved. What they're now coming to you with.
Got about 15 seconds.
Mr. Mayor, may I respectfully object to your honors, to your limitation on the time. The developer had an hour or hour and a half, and they said all sorts of things that are wrong, that are not in the record, that are contrary to law, and that grossly misrepresent.
I respect
What
that.
this
I
is.
respect that objection, but I think what we try and do this is so we can hear from everyone in some kind of fashion. So, sure.
You can search high and low through every piece of paper in this file, which we have done. You will not see a master plan anywhere. This sort of project requires a master plan. There's nothing that's called a master plan. There's nothing that constitutes a master plan. That's a fundamental, preliminary, baseline defect. This proposal meets basically none of the design standards for the overlay district. It's not accessible to anywhere else. In fact, it is a fenced-in compound. The residents can't leave their own apartment complex because there's no fence, there's no opening in the fence to get out. The idea that they're providing some sort of public space down at the buffer is laughable because their own residents can't even get down there. The green space on this project is a few feet between the buildings. There's no meaningful green space in this product. There's no connectivity to anywhere else. There's no bike paths. There are no protected sidewalks. There's none of that stuff that's supposed to be in a project in the overlay district. What this is, the apartments you saw up there, I'm not familiar with those and I may be wrong about this, but they look like townhomes to me. What's being proposed for this project are 3-story apartment buildings that you could find on any highway going into any town in America. Absolutely nothing to do with the vernacular architecture of Southeast Georgia and Brunswick. So I urge you to take a very close look at this. And also, while you all are educated and have independent judgment, it's a shame to just overrule the decision of the Planning and Zoning Appeals Board, who spent so much time and effort looking into this and voted by a 4-to-1 margin to turn it down. Unless you've got some really good reasons to overrule them, I respectfully submit that you not do so.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Commissioner, always good to see you.
Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. I thought I was going to have some flashbacks there for a while, but anyway, before I ever raised my hand to be sworn in as District 4 County Commissioner, I was petitioned by not only the constituents in District 4, but for people on St. Simon Sea Island, all over the mainland and Jekyll Island, to do one thing, do something about this derelict hotel that is horrible entrance to our community. And you know, for 8 years, I tried. And for 8 years, I failed. And so one thing I learned as a politician, if you fail, you blame it on somebody else, or you talk about extenuating circumstances. So I'll talk about that now. The hotel, obviously, as you know, was not in the county, it was in the city, which was a little bit problematic for the county. The county could have foreclosed on the tax deeds, and they were substantial. But in order to do that, you assume the liability for what you foreclose on. It's private property, and the county couldn't determine the specificity of the liability that it was about to incur. And at the same time, there were developers in the process, through the process, that were working with the owner of the property to buy it. And that would be obviously the best thing. But that didn't happen in my tenure. It happened after I left. And now, you know, you have a developer who's ready to move forward. Is this a perfect site plan? No, it's not. I served on the Mainland Planning Commission for 10 years and as a county commissioner for 8. I can tell you, I've seen my fair share of site plans. I ain't seen one perfect yet and never will. But I think it's a good site plan. I think it is certainly something that I hope that you will consider. And
Yeah, about 30 seconds, Commissioner. I hate to say that to my commissioner.
That's okay, but I can wind it up in 15.
you are fortunate. You have a seasoned developer. He not only developed and managed the landscaping on 1,700 acres of Frederica Township, moved hundreds of 100-year-old oak trees, and then replanted them on 9 million cubic yards of dirt with 42-foot elevations. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think one of them died. I wish some of them had, because I hit my golf ball into them sometimes.
Took a lot of money to keep them alive too.
Yep, and that's
A lot of
right.
money.
So I think that this is a win-win for this community, and I hope you'll move forward with a unanimous vote to move forward. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie Brantley, and I live in Island View, an already established neighborhood a mile away from this project. I'm here to ask this commission that if this project moves forward, that it be with the stipulation that the name be changed to something other than Island View. You can't have 2 Island Views or 2 Bell Points or 2 Riversides without causing some level of confusion. Having 2 locations with the same name puts an undue burden on emergency services in determining correct location to send personnel and also where to send dispatch from. I am concerned that this could cause precious delays in receiving help in a situation where every second could be critical. If dispatch has to even ask a frantic caller to clarify apartments or subdivision, then you're already wasting precious moments. This commission has the power to correct the possibility of this from ever happening by placing a name change requirement to this project. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alice Miller-Keyes, and I live at 1210 Magnolia Avenue. I am here representing 100 Miles. I'm the Vice President of Coastal Conservation with that organization. We're a membership-based organization, and we are located within the Glen Avenue Design Overlay District at 7 Glen Avenue. Part of our mission to preserve and protect Georgia's 100-mile coast is to work with community members to advocate for development policies and ordinances that will improve our built environment within the city. We know coastal Georgia is very special. Lots of people are coming here to live and play. There's a great need for housing and the safe accommodations for both residents and visitors. We support development in the city of Brunswick and redevelopment of properties. We know, but new developments need to respect the special aspects of our coast, and they need to increase access to natural resources and minimize hazards and the risk of living in a low-lying environment. New developments should not only bring new tax revenue to the city, but also enhance access to Brunswick's key features and improve our quality of life. I and several members of the community have stood before this commission and the Planning and Appeals Commission many times to plead that the site plan as it's currently presented does not comply with city codes. The site plan does not meet the standards expected in many of the provisions of the Glen Avenue overlay framework. As Mr. Pope pointed out, it doesn't even have a master plan. A master plan, as it's been interpreted tonight, is inconsistent with what is described in the city code. Section 23-15-2, it describes a lot of details that we have not yet seen, that y'all have not yet seen, nor have the Planning and Appeals Commission seen. It doesn't include every detail, but it paints a picture of how all of these pieces of a planned development fit together, including traffic, including connectivity and sidewalks, drainage, and other areas. If the PD text is considered a master plan, then it lacks the specificity that's of the pieces required in the code. The process to review and comment on the site plan has included as many as 8 public meetings, and many of those were very rich in comments and questions from the Planning and Appeals Commission members, as well as the public. But the information in tonight's packet summarized those discussions and didn't go into a lot of detail about that, those in-depth discussions. But the many planning and meetings at the PAC had ended at a vote of 4-1 to recommend that this commission deny approval of the site plan. So what you've heard tonight actually confirms that the development and the review procedure at this stage has not been in compliance and continues to not be in compliance. The site plan itself is not in
Got about
compliance.
15 seconds.
There's a great deal of information that we lack. And so again, I ask that you not approve the site plan before you tonight. Let's take our time, honor the process and get this plan development right. So it can be just what Ms. Ms. Martin said earlier in October. This can be a shining example of what our city can be. We want to work together and make that happen for all Brunswick residents. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Mary McFadden. I live at 405 Marshview Circle Drive in Marshview condominiums. I hope you do not approve the 90% site plan because I think there's still some very important issues that aren't addressed on the site plan, such as inadequate parking, insufficient compliance with the Glen Avenue design framework, Marshview storm drains, and other issues. They don't even define the dimensions of the apartment buildings on the site plan. The idea was to put the increased parking on the adjacent parcel, but that's not in a site plan yet. They just say this is a plot of land that we're going to develop. It doesn't show where these additional parking places will be, so I don't think you can really approve that. The parking spaces that they have are only 8.5 feet wide. So, I mean, that's a standard size, but that means that big trucks and SUVs can't park beside each other. They just won't fit in the spaces and be able to open the door. So that parking's going to be really tight over there anyway. Plus, people aren't going to have enough spaces for their visitors. I think the intentions of the Glen Avenue design framework are being kind of overlooked. It's not streets and blocks and a sense of community and walkability. It's just a huge apartment complex. And I think they could do a little bit better. I know Glen Avenue design framework is an ideal, and we can strive for the ideal. Maybe we don't make it, but they need to try to do some elements of the Glen Avenue design and not remove 58 trees. And every time I say our storm drain, our Marshview storm drain is on that Island View Apartments site. It's not even on the site plan. We would like to have our storm drains identified in some way, shape, or form. And the reason why is because if we have to redo our storm drains, we know that's going to be expensive. We had to dig a new one in 2017. The cost was $40,000. You're talking about 3 drains. It's going to be a significant burden on our owners to foot the bill for that. We really want increased buffers between us and this development. They're very close to us. They're within 5 feet in some areas of the property line. They're taller than us. We're 2 stories, they're 3. They're going to be looking into our windows. There's going to be obviously noise traveling from there, people slamming car doors, people just talking out in the parking lot. We want some protection a little bit from that. Please understand that I think everybody at Marshview Condos welcomes development of that land because we lived with that abandoned motel and the trailer park, and people came from those properties onto our property and they were sketchy and they were scary. We're happy to have the development, but not in its current form. We would like to see it less dense and more in compliance with the Glen Avenue design framework. Thank you.
My name is Helen Stapleton. I'm a resident of Marshview. And like Mary just had said, I've lived at Marshview for over 20 years and can you hear it? I have lived at Marshview for over 20 years, right? Better now? Okay. And we are happy to see something happen because my goodness, all those years, we had robberies, we had people living there, we had drugs, we couldn't even walk outside. For instance, somebody would come to wash, leave the water running, you wake up in the morning and just have a mess all over the place. And I want to thank Vassar for moving back the fence. We couldn't see to get out. And that I know that was hard for him to do. And also too, I'd like him to sit down with us. I don't like this back and forth. We could communicate. It could be a lot better. It could be, we could talk about the drainage. We could talk about a lot of things and work it out. And that's what I'm asking him to do. I've asked him before, and I'd like to ask him again. Thank you for your time.
Les Kleinfelter, live at 401 Marshview Circle Drive
here in Brunswick. First of all, I'd like to thank really the Planning and Appeals Commission for denying this site plan. Okay. They went through this process, I think, 3 times. They listened to what people were saying about this site plan, that it's not complete. Okay, there are a number of issues, and you've heard them tonight already. Stormwater drainage that hasn't been addressed. It should be addressed. Okay, the Glen Avenue, one of the principles of the Glen Avenue design framework indicates that the Glen Avenue should reflect architecture appropriate to coastal Georgia. Okay, we haven't seen what the windows are going to look like in these apartments, or the roof line, or what's going to be on the exterior of these apartments. That's something, before you built a house, wouldn't you want to know these things? I think so. We'd like to see a little bit more detail in that regard. Traffic, you've heard that. That's a major issue. How they're planning on over 200 apartments. How are those people going to get access to Highway 17? There are going to be accidents. And one of the things that the city commission should consider is litigation. Because as soon as someone gets hurt or killed accessing those apartments, what are they going to do? They're going to sue the city of Brunswick. I'll guarantee it. Parking, that's an ongoing issue. Okay, you've heard enough about parking, 1.5 or whatever. That's an issue that should be resolved before this site plan is approved.
Got about 15 seconds.
Okay, I'll skip the fencing issue and go right to one of my main concerns was when this project was proposed, I contacted the developer, Mr. Kate, telephoned him 4 different times, asking him to meet with us to talk about this project. I'm still waiting to hear. I talked with you, Mr. Mayor, when you were on our site. You indicated you were going to talk with Mr. Kate to have him come in and talk with us. Nothing. That concerns me very, very much. I take the position there isn't a problem that can't be solved as long as people are willing to sit down and work together and solve it. One final thing. The Glenn County Commissioners denied a rezoning request on March 16th for a request from Veranda's Townhouse Complex just north of here on Highway 17. Why did they deny it? Because the same issues that you're talking about, the same issues that need to be addressed before this site plan is approved. Okay. Finally, in
We
conclusion.
gotta cut you there. That's
Okay, one
we did
more thing.
15 more seconds.
Just one more thing.
Quickly.
Okay. If, I don't know where you people live,
Mhm.
if somebody came to you tomorrow and said, we're going to build a 3-story, 37-foot high apartment building next to your house, would you be upset about that? I think so. Deny this. It's
you.
not complete.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Woody Woodside, I'm
Mr.
the
Woodside.
resident of Brunswick for the last 48 years and Glenn County for 50. I live in the city of Brunswick and thoroughly love it. I live on Riverside Drive. And I've also been witness to it, worked in this community for a long time, and a lot of it dealing in economic development. And it's a loyal resident of the city. I'll be very honest with you. I've seen quite a bit of decline in the 45 years or more in the city as far as residential growth hadn't been there. And the investment in millions and millions of dollars has declined. And we're seeing a resurgence in a lot of things, but probably since 2016, 17, I looked at a figure that was published by actually folks from the city and with county statistics, and that indicated that 3,368 multifamily units were built from 2019 through right now, currently ongoing in the county. You know how many we've had? 170 in all those years. And
the investment, I think is coming around. Y'all are doing a great job with it. You've got a good staff. And I do think that we need to give this process and this investor, that's the biggest investment I think we probably had in many, many, many years. And it's a good opportunity to create, people call it affordable housing. I call it workforce housing. And a lot of people are looking for that. There are even people still going to retire down here. And I'd like to see that investment come to this community. And I encourage you to move forward with this and get the rest of the answers done that still have to be resolved by the planning they're going to be doing. And they have to come back to you for approval. So I encourage you to pass that motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodside.
Dave Bowers, 526 Newcastle, member of the Planning Appeals Commission. Everything that Mr. Roberts spoke of tonight is about zoning, not a site plan. It's about zoning. The presentation he gave to you was what we kind of forced him into in a work session so that he then knew whether he did or did not meet the Glen Avenue design guidelines. Tonight, I saw a flash on the screen, a more detailed plan for shared parking. First time I've seen it. First time I've seen it. Ask for it many, many times. I agree with everything that John said. I like what Julie said about the split parking. You know, come home from 4 to 12 job, go to your house, then go back out to New China, come in, park your car, walk over there. Do that about twice. I think you'll move. This parking concept that we saw tonight, which again, I cannot comment on because it was up and down, is probably the fourth thing we've seen about parking. The fourth option, none of which met the ordinance. The developer failed in not putting in his narrative the contract between you all and them that he was going to reduce the parking. This is exactly what Piazza did on their project on Gloucester Avenue. Their narrative said, we want less parking. They went through 2 public hearings. It was approved. They changed the parking. They went through 2 public hearings and it was approved. Now we're here at a site plan stage talking about how they're going to answer the parking. If you agree with that, then the parcel that John talked about earlier is going to end up with more than 24 units, all of which are going to come out to the same intersection, which now operates at a level of service E, 1 above F. And those who have been to school know where F puts you. So again, procedurally, I believe you can send this back through the Planning and Appeals Commission to 2 public hearings. You could also change the zoning. If you wanted to change the zoning, I would suggest you change it to general residential. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, William Kitts, Planning Appeals Commissioner. Just 2 quick points. One, of course, we already understand that they do not quite meet the parking ordinance or guidelines for this. My fellow Commissioner Dave just kind of stole a little bit of my thunder. Procedural wise, even with the new lot that has been presented for the shared parking space, at some point in that phase, that's got to come back to the Planning Appeals Commission for their development, I'm assuming. And are we to include that parking, shared parking at that point, and which we still do not have a working matrix of what will be on that property to determine what the amount of parking is going to be required for that property. Thank you. That's all I have.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Robert Mighty Fine Davis Jr., 1303 Sycamore Avenue. And I'm come here this evening. I'll approve the building. But otherwise, I'm in favor of the contractor because Brunswick is my home, and riding down 17, it always was a sore that trailer park in that hotel. And now these guys come in, they're doing something with it, and I think it's going to be nice. And I'll disagree with my friend. I'll say this. My friend came up here, Woody, we was friends for some 40 years. But, but I really like to see something done with that property, and I think this is gonna be the right thing to do. And I appreciate if y'all consider that when you get ready to vote. And y'all do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank you for you and your wife's service to the community as well, Ms. Mighty.
Lance Saby, 1110 Prince Street. Mayor and Commissioners, I was the one dissenting vote on the Planning and Appeals Commission as we've reviewed this application. From my perspective, the developer and this proposal addresses the concerns of both the community and our staff. We have spent numerous hours in public meetings and workshop sessions with this developer addressing both your concerns and our concerns. And I feel like we're at a point where, again, this is not a 100% completed plan. This is a 90% plan. There are numerous more steps that are going to have to take place in terms of engineering and design. And again, that's why we have our current staff at the city level that we trust to continue to help oversight those continued developments, and then translates into issuance of building permits and so on and so forth. A couple major points. This is the first development, again, as you brought up, Mr. Mayor, that we're going to have access to the waterfront. Is it the ideal situation? Would we want to see something bigger and better? Yes, but I think this is the first step in the right direction. It definitely improves the property value. We get rid of the blight that was in that area. And then as we continue to move forward, we'll continue to improve the entire corridor of Highway 17. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your due diligence. Thank you to the rest of the Planning Commission that, again, we've spent hours and hours discussing this and trying to work with the developer. So I think come up with the best solution possible for the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saby. Seeing no one else in line, that ends the public hearing portion, and we are now at a point. Do we have any final questions for staff? Any final questions for staff? Hearing none, we are open for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation to approve the site plan with option B as presented. And that the recommendation, we recommend I don't know if I need to say more about like stormwater infrastructure and traffic plan be brought forth at the correct time. I mean, that's all going to happen.
That'll happen as separately with staff.
Okay. That's my motion.
So what's before us is a motion to approve staff option B, and for us to continue to work with staff as we work with DOT and others. We now have that for a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yep.
Were those nays?
Yeah, they opposed.
Okay.
Nay.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. And so that leaves us with a 3-2 vote. The motion passes. We will now move on to public hearing for new alcohol beverage license. For Snappy Foods, Mr. Patel.
He can.
Assistant Chief Smith, always good to see you. Thank you for being with us this evening.
I have Snap.
Hold on 1 second. Let's let him clear out. All right.
Tonight I have Snappy Foods located at 2905 Glen Avenue. They changed ownership to Ms. Patel on March the 20th, 2023, and she has applied for a beer and alcohol licenses. There is no history, no background
Okay.
history.
There's no history. Wonderful. You said Miss Patel?
Yes,
Is Miss Patel with us?
I believe she is over on the other side.
Can you
Yes,
come to the front
she
for
is.
us, Miss Patel? Thank you for being with us. Oh, can you come to the mic for us, please? No worries. You doing okay?
Good.
Good.
I'm the sister.
Okay.
My sister had to leave because her daughter was crying really loud.
Okay.
So she left, but I stayed back because she told me to just stay back and see when because there was a lot of people here.
Yeah.
So we didn't know when we were gonna get done. So we just,
Okay.
I was just waiting on her behalf.
All right.
But she had to go with her daughter.
But I totally
stayed
understand.
back.
No, we understand. Would you be able to answer any questions for us?
No, I kind of was with her when she did all this.
Okay.
I kind of know some stuff.
Some stuff. Okay. We're gonna ask you just a few questions. All right. The first one I always ask is, have you all met with your NPA? It's the Neighborhood Planning Association, Assistant Chief Smith.
They were not allowed to meet at the meeting on this month. and,
Okay.
Has been requested to meet next month.
So
a good
they were
year.
present at the
They were
meeting
present. They were not
to
allowed to
present,
speak. That's correct.
and the NPA did not allow
The
them
chair
to
did
speak.
not allow them to speak.
Which NPA are they?
Good
part-
year.
I'm sorry.
Good year.
Good year. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and when is their next meeting?
Tuesday in June.
Second Tuesday in June.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there was an attempt made to meet with the NPA. Was that a first attempt or a second attempt, or do you?
First, yeah.
That was your first attempt. Okay. Any,
It isn't existing. I mean, Snappy, we
Yeah,
drive
it's
by it on
existing. It's
17
just
all the
new.
time.
it's just a
new
transfer of
ownership.
ownership.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Is there anyone here to speak on?
She was here, but she had to run.
Okay.
So-
That's our. it's
The only
just-
other question we usually ask is training of employees as far as checking IDs and having that be regular all the
Yeah.
time.
Well, what we do is continue on to make sure there is ID signs everywhere. And we always check the person when they walk up. As soon as we know that, we always scan the ID. That way we're safe.
Mm.
So we have a system where it scans everything.
Okay.
Then you scan it and then it goes through. Otherwise, you punch in the birth date. If it's valid, we don't sell.
Okay.
That's how we do. We
Okay.
work in the store.
So was it a request to speak at the NPA meeting prior to the meeting being held? Because if it wasn't a planned thing, then I can see them probably not being able to speak. So was it a planned request?
I am not aware of that at this time, if there was a plan or not. I believe they possibly just showed up. They were told to, that was a part of the step, that's what they needed to do. And so I believe it's just a learning curve.
Okay,
You hear
yeah.
that, Commissioner Harris?
Yeah, I heard that part, but
Okay.
I guess they need to speak with them and ask them to be able to be put on their agenda to be heard and for them to speak with the NPA because they do have agendas already pre-prepared. But also the change in, this is a change in ownership as to why they're coming before us now.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Commissioner Rowe?
Commissioner Harris, they actually attempted to be put on the agenda, but was denied by the chair for the NPA. I just don't see where this situation is different from Matted X, because remember, they were approved because the NPA wasn't meeting during the timeframe. I was told that, did they apply for a license back in March?
Yeah, but
And
then they had told us that we had to wait till the meeting. and
Right,
come
so
to
I
the
mean,
meeting,
we're,
and
Okay.
then something didn't work out, so we here.
Okay, yeah, I would want to know why they denied them from being able to address that with
because
them.
she told them because they were not added to the agenda, so they couldn't speak.
Okay,
I don't see why they just couldn't, you know.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I was
Thank you for-
present.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Yeah, somehow that needs to change a little bit. I mean, at least NPAs need to be made aware that this is business,
Right.
and that things need to be done timely. If there's any opportunity to make it be timely, that would be important.
Yeah, and so that would be a requirement on both parties. That they make their requests in a timely fashion to that NPA, and that the NPA has a response to them in a timely fashion.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, we'll open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the license for,
Do we need
sit-
public
Oh,
hearing?
public comment. I apologize. I'm sorry about that. Anyone to speak for or against?
Got called on it too, so.
Yep.
Good evening. I think the NPA should make a recommendation to this commission.
Again, Lance Sabi, 1110 Prince Street. I just have one point of question. Maybe staff can help answer, but since it is a new ownership, they have an exorbitant amount of signage and flashing lights in front of Snappy. So I would like the commission to consider that as the approval of the liquor license to see if they can be more conforming to the Glen Avenue design guidelines. Thank you.
Yeah, do they need to be, since it is a change of ownership, actually?
So they would not need to renew any sign permits. We'll just need to take a look at their signage situation and see what their compliance
Okay.
is.
I'm just making sure I'm understanding you right. Just basically you're saying that it's flashy, I guess. It's like a lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Take a note of that and let her change that if that's what is the problem. We can make sure that they remove that stuff and keep it less.
Mhm.
I can note that down.
So is it out of compliance now? Was it approved previously when they put the signs up?
I don't know if there's been a determination on compliance right now. I think we'd probably have to,
I don't,
I let John speak a little bit on it, but probably code enforcement probably has to go look to see.
Yeah,
if
I would say in general, their signs that require permits are likely compliant. It's the it's the signs that don't require permits where we typically see issues like a flashing open sign, or that there's too much signage covering the windows. Window signs don't require permits, but a lot of times more than 50% or 40% of the window gets covered, and that's non-compliant with our sign ordinance.
I was gonna say, that's a matter that should have been observed prior to tonight.
I didn't, what happened?
It's a continual education process with our, in particular, our convenience stores.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, commissioners and mayor. My name is Dolores Harrison, and I'm a part of the Goodyear MPA. Normally on the issue of her not being able to speak, if she would approach the MPA in advance and let them know that she wants to be on the agenda, they do include her, but if by chance a person pops up sometime, they will be denied. Thank you.
Mayor, I will ask the MPAs to have an item on their agenda for these purposes, since it is required, because, you know, when we send businesses, it should be convenient and not something that they have to wait 30 more days or 45 days. I think the MPAs, you know, need to have an understanding that you all are allowing them the opportunity to have input on this particular decision. And it's incumbent for them to help us with this process by having it, you know, a slot on their agenda and just ask, are there any, you know, thing that needs to happen such as this, so that it won't be delayed regardless of that process.
Yeah, because we're looking at a 4-week wait right now.
And if I could, on the newest revision of the alcohol ordinance, which obviously just went into effect. So these are procedures that are rolling out. It does account for the NPAs having the ability to, excuse me, take these licenses up. It directs an applicant, and probably need to work internally on this process, directs the applicant to go to the community development department to make sure that they are seeking out to be on the agenda for the appropriate MPA, where they intend to be located, that they have submitted to be getting in advance, being placed on that agenda. And then in the event that there is a non-responsive issue, it would be a 3-week time period. If they're not responsive within 3 weeks, the applicant can still move forward with bringing it to the commission level. So there is an internal, we can, we'll work a little bit better on getting that rolled out. So it should seemingly be able to prevent the idea that they're not notifying the MPA in advance, and hopefully provide that advance notice to the MPA and then be having them placed on the agenda.
Okay. And
Thank you, Brian, because we're not going to put this so much on the NPA and hold them just as one party responsible. This is a two-party responsibility. And so if they know that this is coming forward, they should be having communications with the NPA so that these matters can be addressed prior to this. So I understand what the city manager has said, but I also understand what Brian has just read, and there's a two-party responsibility. So we're not gonna make the NPA the bad player in this process.
no, I think if I heard you, there should be a set agenda item every time an MPA meets that just has that open. If there is a alcohol license renewal or new coming up, that it's always on the agenda. And then we would need to make sure that the deputy marshal is providing the contact information for the NPA at the get-go.
Right.
And
So
make sure-
there's some responsibility on the city because, the businesses don't know which MPA and that kind of thing. So communication has to be made prior to. But what I'm saying is if that does not occur in a timely manner, then they have some allowance of so that it won't be kicked out and that kind of thing.
Do they come down and apply for a business license the same time they're requesting an alcohol license?
I mean, it's part of the process of getting an occupational tax certificate at the same time. Yeah.
So we know, so what Regina's saying she can do will work, right? I mean, if they come in to get a license and alcohol's involved, it goes to community development and
They would also need an occupational tax certificate. So yes, it would be both. I mean, I think that we can work internally to make sure that process goes.
yeah.
In this case, I believe it was about timing, the timing of the sale of the business and the exchange. At that point, once they spoke with the deputy marshal, she was advised that they would need to reapply for the alcohol license due to the change of ownership. So it was about timing. So that's what happened.
Any other questions? Hearing none. I don't know if I have a fix off the top of my head for this issue. What is important to me is that some kind of communication is had with the MPA. I understand that they won't meet again until an exorbitant amount of time. I'm not going to say what I think necessarily what a motion or anything to that nature would be. But in the meantime, whatever the motion is made, I hope that we can work with you all hand in hand to have a conversation about signage to ensure that that is gotten under control fairly swiftly, whether it's you all are approved tonight or you come back before another meeting. And the other thing, if it happens to be deferred until our next meeting, would be incumbent upon us to get you the information for leadership inside of the MPA and make sure that you set up some kind of meeting, whether it's with their leadership or leadership council, to ensure that they fully know what's going on.
I would just like to add, my sister had told me she had contacted Miss Amy a couple of times for like the meetings. So we know we had to be there on time. We don't miss the meeting.
Mhm.
And that had happened the last time, like you said, they didn't have a place for us.
Mhm.
And before that, like we would make sure on our side, if you can also ask Miss Amy, she'll tell you.
Mhm.
She called a couple of times and every time something doesn't go wrong, she would tell me about it. So
Mhm.
that's how I knew. So we did contact a couple of times to
Okay.
get into the meetings. It's not like, I just want to let you know what we did.
So you all contacted Miss Amy,
The-
and Miss Amy kind of just let you all know the timing of the meeting. She
Yeah,
didn't.
She told us that there was a meeting and then she said, oh, you're not allowed to be in this meeting, but then I'm not sure, like there is a meeting every month,
Uh-huh.
twice a month. And
So you called one time and the agenda
Yeah.
was full.
yeah, and
and
then
then-
like we did stay in touch with her. So we were like, okay, next week, maybe
Okay.
next, so then it's been like 2 months.
Okay.
So we thought today would be the day. We'll
That's
know
the story I
what's
was
going on
told as
today.
well.
So
Okay.
we're like,
that's-
we did contact them.
So you have reached out to Miss Amy several times. Miss
Yep.
Amy had reached out to the MPA.
And she was, last time the meeting was here and she told us that it's not for you guys, so you're not supposed to be there in that
Yeah.
meeting. So which we thought, okay.
So
And
we're
then
talking
we're
about two
supposed-
separate meetings. There's our meeting here,
Yeah.
and then there's an NPA meeting.
Yeah,
and
which,
so-
yeah, we didn't know that until
Okay.
I just found out about it today.
All right.
There's a meeting like that.
Okay.
Which,
Um,
so
okay.
I'll explain it to-
Yeah, I will, leave it to the commission. It would be my hope that maybe we could at least defer this item into our next meeting, which would allow us to have a more forthright conversation with you all about signage, as well as give you time to meet with MPA leadership to talk about it. That I can't make a motion, so I can't tell you that's going to happen, but I wanted to state
So
that for the record.
next time, should we call Miss Amy and we should know?
Before we leave here,
Okay.
we will straighten out
Okay.
whatever we got to straighten out to get you there. Okay. All right. With that, I'll open it up for a motion.
I'll
So,
make a motion to, go ahead, Julie.
no. You go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the license for 2023. I'm sorry, 2905 Glen Avenue, Cinnabon Incorporated, Darbin Patel,
Okay.
for retail sale of beer and wine.
Hearing a first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Aye. With that, the motion passes.
Because it would have been.
There was from what I heard, 3. We had a 3-1 vote. I'm not sure if Commissioner Harris voted or I didn't hear it audibly.
I did.
Okay. Okay, 4-1. All right. On to items to consider for approval. Miss Assistant Chief Smith, can we make sure that we still get her the information for MPA leadership? She can, thank you. Consider approval of May 5th, 2023 regular scheduled meeting minutes. We'll open that for motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May the 5th regular schedule meeting.
Hearing a first, do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll move on to consider approval of memorandum of understanding between the City of Brunswick, Downtown Development Authority, Georgia Department of Community Affairs, and the National Trust Main Street Center for continued participation in the National Main Street Program. Director Hill.
Well, you got all of those right.
Got it.
Next year I'll throw in the acronyms, to throw you off a little bit. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As I said at the last meeting, this is our annual memorandum of understanding between the city, the Downtown Development Authority, and the Georgia Department of Community Affairs regarding the Brunswick's continued participation in the National Main Street Program. This MOU came about 10 years ago. This is unchanged from last year's MOU. It spells out what the community, in other words, the city agrees to do, appoint somebody to be the Main Street Board, and that's the Downtown Development Authority, employ full-time manager, that's me, provide us with information, which we report every month. It tells the board of directors to assist me in doing my work. I do the reporting every month, participate in training, maintain the properties index files and project files for all eternity, which we have downstairs. And DCA agrees to assist us in any way that we can, or they can, or they ask us. So that's in a nutshell. I can bring my hour presentation.
Thank goodness you didn't.
This requires a motion to allow the mayor to sign it, which you've probably been getting a daily email from Ellen Hill asking
Probably
you to
have.
sign it. And she's no relation to me.
You're not claiming her.
That's it.
No.
Well, with that, we will
But if
open
you
it
have
for a
any
motion.
questions,
I'll make a motion that we approve the MOU as presented between the City of Brunswick, Downtown Development Authority, Georgia Department of Community Affairs, and the National Trust Main Street Center for continued participation in the National Main Street Program.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Director Hill. We will now move on to tentative approval of proposed 23-24 fiscal year budget. City Manager McDuffie.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to request approval of the proposed budget tentatively so that we can meet the state requirement for a public hearing to be publicized, the notice to be placed in the paper for that public hearing. The proposed general fund budget for the city for fiscal year 2024 is $24,381,592, which includes a revenue recovery of $4,123,624 of funding that will be designated for revenue recovery with ARPA funds. The budget is balanced between the revenues and the expenditures. And it is a 7.9% increase of general revenues over last year. There was a presentation done at the previous meeting that went through our revenues extensively in terms of revenues generated through property tax, sales tax, and other taxes of 18.3 million. The budget does include appropriated fund balance of $550,000. And there were some decreases in a couple of our revenue items relative to our municipal court revenues and our building permits. The budget includes authorized positions of 237 positions, but the budget proposes to fund approximately 206 positions. Included in those positions is 13 new full-time positions, 11 for our recreation department, 1 for human resources, and 1 for information technology. The key initiatives in the budget include some funding for housing development and community revitalization, community engagement and outreach for our city recreation and for public transportation. The special revenue recovery will be designated for housing programs at $2.5 million, but business support at $800,000, facility improvements for Howard Coffin Park of $600,000, and support of the transit services for $220,000. The budget is requested to be tentatively approved today for that publication, and I will take any questions.
I have a question about the, and I don't want to steal Commissioner Kason's thunder talking about the cemeteries, but I know that we are, we have the Department of Corrections crew scheduled to continue because I saw it as a budget item.
Mhm.
And I know we're now post-COVID. Is there still an opportunity or a benefit to having the second crew?
Reinstated.
Yeah, or do they not have the skills needed that we used to have for public works, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, as far as I know, there, are limited skill crews that
Mhm.
they are allowing out of the Department of Correction. But I would have to confer with Garrow and Albertson, the director, to see if he has asked the prison if they have the availability of a second crew.
Yeah, I would just be curious to know what the standing is now on a second crew and, I mean, are they in training for, masonry work or other skills so that when they're released, they have a better opportunity for employment, but maybe that's not on the table. I don't
I
know.
will make an inquiry
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
And I also wanted to comment on your questions from the last meeting. You had asked about the hotel motel tax and the
Mhm.
short-term rental. At this point, last year, we collected about $48,000, which was significantly higher than previous years. This year, we've collected 48,000 through year to date. So
Okay.
we will be a little bit higher than that by the end of the year. I did speak with Director Hunter, and he said that he has not confirmed a contract for tracking and monitoring of those short-term rentals.
Okay.
In addition, you asked about the TAD, and we did look at that, and we have to, right now, we are confirming what those revenues are. The calculation for 2022
Mhm.
is about $132,000, and that includes the city, county, and the school board. And also, we are looking at 2021, but there was some change that they saw that was significant and may have thrown those numbers off, so we haven't confirmed that yet. But we
So-
will be able to confirm that.
And so the amount that you said, in excess of 100,000, is that incremental increase?
That's
That was-
for, yes,
Yes,
that's for
okay.
2022.
Okay.
But there was a difference in 2021, and we did not put anything in the budget for 2024, but we may have to, because when I talked to Ms. Mills, she said that she would rather funnel that money through the general fund as a transfer out, unless we can designate those funds to go specifically to the TAD fund. But that's an
Well-
accounting issue.
I mean, I thought that the TAD money was held separately because it's to be used for capital improvements within the tax allocation district.
It's calculated out of we have to have a listing and then make that calculation. And what she was telling me, based on how we collect the taxes, that doesn't happen on the front end. So we have to do the calculation after all the taxes are collected and then transfer it to the TAD.
Okay. Okay. I thought you were taking it out.
No.
And putting it in the general fund.
No,
Okay.
it's actually taking it out of the general fund and putting it in the TAD.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I
Mhm.
You know,
appreciate you doing
if I
that.
can help with the thing about the prisoners, they have a list over at Correction Institute, and you have to get on that list is what you have to do. And I thought we had asked to go ahead and
We
get
did,
us on the list.
we did talk to them about that last year, but I have not had any conversation with them in several months. So I would have to follow up with that.
Well, we definitely should put something in the budget for if it becomes available. I mean, there's so much in demand. Everybody wants that kind of help right now, and we had it.
So we have one crew. in the
We had
budget.
three.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did
We had
have
three.
three.
Yeah.
We had three,
We-
and we're down to one, and we should be trying to get the two back. What I want to follow up with is we talked about hiring people in last year's budget to do ditches and to clean out all of our ditches and have we done that?
We are working, yes, we have hired several people. I don't think they have, but maybe 1 or 2 vacancies. So we have had those crews and they have been working to clean out the ditches a lot better and a lot more.
I thought the same thing when I was looking through here about the correct, and then it hit me on the ditches, that it wasn't just a correction, but I never heard anything about where we were with the ditch situation.
Yes, we did. It took us a little bit because of hiring and trying to get people on board. But right now, Public Works is almost fully staffed. So we do have those crews on board now.
Okay. I've got you through, Julie. In the police department's budget, I noticed that you have not funded the Glenn Special Investigation Unit.
That unit is no longer working.
Well, there's a reason that it isn't working is because we couldn't staff it.
Well, actually, that was the unit that was with the county. And when they had those issues with the personnel, they didn't put together, because that's a joint unit that worked with the county.
Right.
Of course, if we get to our staffing levels that we're trying to attain, we will reinstate that unit.
Okay.
I mean, every unit, and that's why we lead the authorized personnel. We would like to have every unit of the police department staffed as much as possible. And we will put those special units in place as soon as possible, because that's something that the police department and the personnel would like to be. They like to have different designations other than being on the street and on traffic. So.
Well, I know that we didn't have any activity in 2023. I mean, it was very minimal, but there was a reason for it. And one of the big things in general and looking through here is, in going back to the police department, is that we've got a human resources department. We've got the city manager, we've got an assistant city manager. We've got a shortage of policemen on the street, and we've got to do something about it. Something's got to be done. I mean, I believe in a central administration for services is what I believe in. I won't go through the purchasing thing. I've already asked for that and I haven't gotten it, but the police department needs help. They need help in hiring people. That's got to come from you. It's got to come from the assistant city manager. It's got to come from HR. And that's where it's got to come from. If we have to hire a consultant, we need to hire 2. We've got consultants in here.
We actually had a meeting earlier this week with the police chief and the assistant chiefs to talk about whether we needed a contract for recruitment. And we did have that conversation earlier this week. We have talked about HR and their assistance to the police department. So all of that is kind of in the works. And we will be working. I mean, we are doing a lot to make sure we are hiring certified officers and getting people on the streets as quick as possible. We have made some headway, but not a lot. So, but I think, we are diligent in our work right now.
Well, again, I'm looking in the budget right now, and this is the place to do it right now to show that we're going to go after police officers to put them on the street. This is where it is. I appreciate the $100,000 in here for bonuses. I think that's strong. I really do, but I don't see, and I'm going from my experience also, okay? I don't see that they're getting the administrative support that they need. And that's what my concern is. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's what I don't see. I don't get that feedback. I didn't know that you'd had a meeting. I had no idea.
We have
Yeah.
meetings probably almost twice a month just to make sure that they are working the recruitment plan that is in place.
Yeah.
And because we haven't made as much headway, we did talk about getting a contracting with someone to help with recruitment. So that was the option that we looked at or
There
looking
couldn't
at.
be a more perfect place in my estimation than being a police officer in the city of Brunswick, Georgia, and helping us get some of this stuff behind us that's out there right now. I mean, we're just I've never seen anything like it. I mean, the headlines of the paper today, a teenager, you know?
Again, I
Uh,
mean, it's hard in this area. We have such competition with the sheriff's office, with the county police, you know, it's a revolving door. So those are challenges that we have with people coming into the community, but we are working as hard as we can. We are actually paying more than the most entities trying to get
We've come a long way.
police officers in, so.
I agree. Just in general, we're buying a lot of gasoline. I think there might be a better way than a card to do that, but I don't know that empirically. I really don't. I wish I did know it empirically, but I don't. And I've tried to find out about that and have not been given any information. But we buy a lot of electricity. There's a thing called solar. I mean, all kind of things that we could be looking at to reduce our cost here and do some of the things that I asked for last year in the 2023 budget that I haven't heard any comments back about reducing anything, nothing, not a thing. Thank the Lord for
More money.
CARES Act money. That's not going to get us where we need to be. You know, it's there. And again, I thank the Lord for it as manna from heaven. But that's not what's going to get us where we need to be is running a good business. And that's, again, I say solar, I say looking at alternative energy vehicles, that sort of thing. See if they'll work out for us, get us off of some of that gas thing. And one thing I would like to ask you that I've held back on doing it since we went to the cards, if we did ever have a problem where you needed a gas tank for sure, where would you get it? Because people that sell you gasoline with a credit card are not going to be able to take care of fleets. Possibly, just something to think about. Just, you're going to need some gasoline to run the city of Brunswick. The county is going to need it to run the county. So if you don't have that lined up, I suggest you do. Yeah, I know you got the cards, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's using the cards. Is
Right.
anybody doing anything else other than the cards?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
We're actually using the cards.
Well, I really suggest that you put a plan in place to have an auxiliary. That if something does happen, there's lots going on out there in the world today that we aren't in charge of. And again, I just want to share my experience. I've been through it. I know what it is. I endured it and got a lot of experience from doing it. And I know that you have to have some good friends out there to get through some of the hard times I came through in the 70s. So I do, if you haven't thought about that, I do suggest looking into that.
I'll talk to the directors, the ones that have the, high use of gas.
And I would also suggest seeing what the county's doing. They used to have their own pumps. I don't know if they've gone to the cards or not. I see the advantage
know.
of doing it too, Regina. I really do. There's not, it's give and take. But you still got to have the fleet to, if things do go back to something like I saw in 1977 through 80, that sort of, it was a long time. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. It's a good budget and I sure like the way it's presented. I really do. Overall, it's great and it's pretty general and upfront and a lot of information there.
Thank you.
Perfect. With that, if we don't have any more questions, we'll open it for a motion.
I just had a comment.
Sorry about that.
No problem. And can you go back up towards the top of the budget presentation? Regina, has there been considered a reserves list for the police department that they have reserve cops, reserve policemen?
When you talk about reserve police, what do you mean?
Like some that's retired, but they can but they come and they fill in different areas on a need be basis so that frees up the other on duty policeman to go handle whatever other business needs to be handled. Perhaps like smaller matters, the reserve police will handle, and then those that are working the normal shifts or duties handle what they need to handle.
That has not been talked about, but I can present that. I'm not sure, and again, you probably would have to have them as not on the road or not, since they probably don't have their post certification kept up. So in those administrative position possibly. But I haven't had a conversation about that.
You've got 3 part-time is what I've been told.
We do have part-time and we do use the part-time as much as possible.
3 is what you got.
Okay.
3
Yeah,
right.
but that's part-time. I'm just talking about building a reserve list. I was talking to a friend of mine and Tampa has such a list that they have a list of reserve police officers that have retirees that they can just kind of like an annuity type of program that they can call on to do some of the smaller duties while the other regular force handles what needs to be handled or fill in for them on an as needed basis.
Yes, I'll look into that.
One other thing, Regina, the COPS program, you've got that going, trying to reformulate that, don't you?
Yes.
Something that I've suggested for code enforcement is trying to put the same program in place that we have for the cops for code enforcement. And I've not heard too much back about that either, but I think it would be worthwhile. And I think you would get a lot of folks that would be interested, particularly with these NPAs today, the way they're going. I think you probably would find some people that would be out there if you would get with the appropriate people and see if maybe that wouldn't be a way to help with code enforcement. They could sure drive around and look at places like I look at where we need signage. I know that. So.
Well, I'd have to let.
Has the IT department followed up with any work on the 311 project?
Yes, they have. Actually, we're no longer looking at 311. There's a program that they said may work better. So I need to see where they are on vetting that particular program, and maybe bringing that back to the commission and presenting.
Okay, perfect.
But it's a similar program.
Something else, if I may follow up on my code enforcement volunteer force. Mr. Lehman over there had a similar problem that he brought to us, that had we had people riding around and looking that were looking for coded kind of problem, they would have been identified that. Perhaps Mr. Lehman wouldn't have had to been here tonight, And by the way, you've got rocks in the middle of your road on G Street too. And I wonder if we could get a street sweeper around then and sweep those up for him. So that's not budget, but anyway, yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Roll.
I didn't want to go back and forth. I also want to just thank Officer Bew. She is present once again at a lot of places recruiting police, and I don't want to go back and forth with Commissioner Kaysen, but people know that the positions are open, they're out there, job openings, but the other thing we have to ask is what drives someone to move to Brunswick to even want to be a police officer, to stay here? That's another factor too, as a community. What do we have as a community to offer people to pick up their families to relocate here? I don't think it's an issue with the HR department or recruiting. Some people just don't want to be officers anymore. People, don't want to move to an area like this, and we're not the top 10 places for people to want to live these days because of, what transpired with Ahmaud. So I just want to, just say that, like, I feel as if HR is recruiting and they're doing their job. It's just, people just don't want to be police officers anymore. And the majority of our officers that work for us, if I'm not mistaken, most of them are probably from here. So they want to, protect their communities, and that's why they're still here, just like myself and Cosby, like we moved back because this is home, but you don't see too many able-bodied people that want to be officers that want to relocate here. So I say all that to say that I do see that the police department is out recruiting. They are there. Anytime you see anything, you see the officers they're recruiting, the social media they're recruiting, to the audience, I feel as if that they want to attract, I don't know if it's in the paper. I don't read the paper. Millennials, we go to social media. So I don't know if they put ads in the paper, like I've said before. So once again, I just want to commend the City of Police Department because they are doing their best with trying to get officers.
They are out in the community a lot more, even though we are short-staffed. They have been very diligent about being in the community. And we are trying to push the outreach outside of this community as well. So, they are doing a lot, but there is some things that we are continuing to evaluate and continuing to try and say, okay, can we do this and can we do that? So I appreciate you all's input and feedback, and I think, we will be trying our best to get more people into our police department because it continues to be a shortage. Also, we have had support from the sheriff's office, and they have been providing support for us. I think we may be bringing something back if we need to approve compensation for that. But we are currently looking at that to ensure that we have the proper support from the sheriff department as we've been getting.
Listen,
And they are doing it. Our police department is doing an awesome job. I agree with each of you. They are doing an awesome job, and they are out in the community. But we have to also, this is a national problem that we're trying to deal with on our local level. But like Regina said, there is competition that we're not just experiencing. The county is experiencing it as well. They're losing their officers to other counties. They're losing their officers to the sheriff's department as well. And so we also have to look at why we're getting officers, what is our retention, why we're getting officers, and why they are leaving the department as we get them into the department.
Let me say something. I want to be clear about this. We've got a problem in this town. It is a big time problem. We've got to have a police department. I'm not putting anybody in the corner. Please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm trying to generate some conversation. We're here at budget time. And to me, that's what we're supposed to be doing, is talking about this thing. By no means am I pointing my finger at anybody, absolutely nobody. I want the police department staffed, and I know everybody does. I think we've got to look at this budget. I see things in here, consultants here, consultants there, other positions. I'm the one with the experience. I've sat down here, I've done this stuff. I pretty much have an idea of what it is. We've got to focus this thing on the police department right now. Again, it's up to us. We're the city commission. If I'm putting anybody down, I put us down, okay? That's who I put down.
Well,
it's up to us to give you the guidance, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. And that is the only thing, is to reinforce the police department and reinforce the city manager. They're back there and they hear me. I don't think they're misconstruing what I'm saying.
Well,
I don't think anybody's misconstruing what you're saying, Johnny. I think just as you've come from your perspective in your seat, I think everybody else has come from the same perspective that they have individually and respectively. As you see it, the way you see it, others see it as well. So I don't think that anybody has taken that you are trying to point the finger or put anybody down, because really and truthfully,
I want to be clear, okay? Let's be clear.
I don't think anybody takes that way, Johnny. So if you're perceiving that the same way that you have your input, I think that everybody else is giving theirs as well from different perspectives. So I don't think that you may be perceiving it that way, but I don't think anybody has said that, or anybody has brought that about, or has made that has even made that has even inferred that. So I think that the same way that you're coming from your direction, Commissioner Rowe came from hers, I came from mine, and the city manager has come from hers. And so together with all of these different directions to address what is actually happening in the city, I think it's a good thing. So I don't think anybody's inferring anything. I think it's just a matter of conversation, as you said. And so we take what you said, you take what we said, and we move and work to build to make the Brunswick Police Department a stronger, healthier, a more valuable department.
And let me just add, we are in conversation with the state, with the GMA. We are working through the workforce pilot program that they presented to the city of Brunswick. I'm actually doing a presentation at the GMA conference on workforce development and telling them some of the issues and things that we've done in our community. So we are having statewide conversations. And again, it is a statewide problem. We are, working to address it and using all the tools that I feel that are available to us. And we'll continue to reevaluate our processes and make sure that, we're doing everything we can to bring in police officers. Thank you.
We've got 37 sworn officers right now. Is that right?
Chief, we have
37.
37 sworn officers, I think.
So we need how many?
Probably about 23, maybe, I think, to get up to 60.
And the only thing I ask for is to direct the resources to get them. What resources have we got to have? And I want to be clear with that. Okay?
I think we're doing that, and we will continue
Well,
to work.
Be
to do that.
clear with me, because I've got to have some information, okay? I don't know what you're doing, and now I am sincere when I mention what I mentioned. I'm not trying to paint a corner for anybody. I see the paper, I saw the headlines today, and I don't like them, and I know we can't eliminate those headlines, particularly if we don't have people out there on the street. Thank you.
I want to open it up for a motion. And by no means, I see that you brought the schedule up, and I appreciate you having the schedule there, because this is not the final. This is still a work in progress. So with that, I will open it up for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we tentatively approve the annual 2024 budget as presented.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
We do not have executive session tonight.
Well, we have one more. We have.
Oh,
one
we
more
got
item.
10. My bad.
What is it? We've got the 911.
The 911.
Very quick. What you have before you, or what has been added as an addendum item, is a 911. As everyone knows, we have the Joint Public Safety Committee. It's our E911 center. The county and the city created it jointly. We entered into these external entity agreements with Jekyll, several other entities, including College of Coastal Georgia. We've done one with the college in 2018, 19, 20, 21. This one comes up in expired 22, so we're doing it for the additional now 2023 year. We're putting it in place, and it allows them to utilize the Joint Public Safety radio waves and utilize E911, our services, our radio services. All the costs are borne by the college, and the county has already approved this. But we just need to approve at the city commission level, and that's it.
Perfect.
So it's just adding the college.
It's all, the
into
college
the
has
fold.
the college has been a part of this MOU since 2018.
Mhm.
So we added Jekyll in 2016, college in 2018. So every year there's a new external entities agreement that's renewed every single year. So it's just a renewal.
Okay, and we do it with each one of them as opposed to this huge joint thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Brunswick Glen 911 services agreement for external entities.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. With that, we will open it for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second? Hearing the first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, we are adjourned.
So Naomi, will you be letting us know when the public hearings are then for the budget? Oh, okay, so not at noon time.